Tie looks great. I don't know how my top always goes one way or the other. Constantly like doing that whole thing to try to get it straight. All right, we should be live.
Okay, I'm going to call the meeting to order. Hope you're ready there. Okay, are there adjustments to the agenda?
There are two. One is to include a discussion with Jeff Northgraves, the chair of the Ordinance Review Committee, about any changes to their charge and the work that they're doing. And then the other would be if you all feel that you need to have an official vote to potentially accept skate park equipment from the Y, or you can just indicate to me that we're okay accepting this and I'll store it. But it's whether the board feels comfortable taking and receiving these items without an official vote. But the only thing being, you all are charged with accepting gifts to the town. This is theoretically a gift to town. So if you wanted to just have it be officially official, then you could add an item to prove that.
So put it at the end of new business.
Okay.
You're gonna have to clarify to me, but I don't think we could go on. Are there citizen comments for items that are not? All right.
Where did you want to add the ORC discussion so maybe Jeff doesn't have to be here for the entire meeting?
I was planning to be here.
Okay.
I think admin and department head sections.
Makes sense.
So department heads.
Okay, People's Sport Club. We're not hiring anybody.
Yes, we
Except
are.
for two, Ambrose.
Correct.
Amy?
Hi. Sorry, I can't hear you guys very good. It's kind of mumbly, but I have Ro with me here. He's one of the hires. So if you guys, I'll switch chairs with him and you can meet him and say hi and
Okay.
ask him questions. All right. You got it.
Hello there.
So it's Roe.
Yes, Ro Carlson.
I'm Walter Wrights.
Nice to meet
Right
you.
is John Spear. To my left is Jan Gaudio. Why don't you tell us about yourself, number one, and what attracts you or interests you in serving the town of South Thompson?
Sure. So I just passed Amy's class about less than a month ago, and I'm looking for experience on a department in South Thomaston. I live in Alsed, so it's right beside where the town I live in. So I just saw South Thomaston as a great place to start off with somebody I already know how to work with.
Can we make it louder?
Not without some other speakers.
Maybe we'll have to turn this off.
I don't want to turn that
I know, I'm bringing that.
Welcome to the world of COVID.
on. We're just gonna have to deal with it,
Okay.
I think.
All right, we're here.
He's just introducing
You
himself.
can, you can also watch it later.
Luckily, this discussion is almost exclusive to the board and their hiring. So I have this as loud as I can. It doesn't have a huge amount of amplification.
So Ro, Amy's class is basic EMT.
Yes, I am.
Any experience before that?
I had fire. I'm on a volunteer fire department.
On South Thomas?
Owl's Head.
Yeah, questions?
So, you're there to get some experience and we can provide that.
No, I'm all set. Okay. So is there a motion to authorize, approve Amy's hire of Rose Carlson?
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor? Thanks, Ro. Good luck.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Support. Amy, have you got Becca too?
I have Becca. She actually is on a call right now. She was going to zoom in, but she's on an ambulance call. She works for Northeast full time, and she lives in South Thomaston. So she would like to do some night runs. She's been an EMT for, I think, 4 years. But she just texted me and said that she wasn't able to zoom in right now because she's there with patients. So Tuesdays is her normal shift at Northeast. So
Are you gonna hang around for your reporting?
Yep. yes,
What did you just, okay, because we can't hear you.
We'll recap it.
Is it new hires?
Yes.
Okay,
On your agenda, we're on that people's scorecard.
thank you.
We just approved Roe Carlson first.
So the department heads have latitude,
Possible
but
to talk louder?
We've been discussing that. Before you got here, sorry.
so the department heads do the recruiting, searching, and interviewing. We instituted a policy or reaffirmed a policy a couple of years ago where we want to at least meet people because we're ultimately accountable.
Exactly.
So that's what we're doing. Anybody know Becca?
Oh, I swear.
She's got
She
4 years
lives-
experience.
she lives in down by David Elwell on that road. So that's where she lives. So she's pretty close to the station. She wants to mostly help out David and the night shift people. She is more going to be a volunteer night call person than per diem. So I don't know if that helps, but they just got called out for another call. So I don't think she's going to be able to make it on today's meeting.
Probably well qualified for the position.
Rebecca.
Thank you.
You're on.
All right, been moved and seconded, all in favor? Thank you, Amy.
Thank you. And I'll try to have her stop in at the next meeting or at least zoom in again or something. But Tuesdays are just hard for her because that's her normal shift there.
Our meetings are always on Tuesdays, so.
Yeah.
We may double up in the fall.
Okay.
Okay, I'll make a suggestion about financial review. Can we rename it treasurer's report and incorporate that? And if you would, start with revenue.
Absolutely, but prior to that, I definitely want to recognize Chelsea Summers.
Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize.
She's the recipient of the John M. Nickerson Scholarship. So I'll just read this, it's a small paragraph. The John M. Nickerson Scholarship Fund was established at UMA in 2013 with an intentional donation from longtime UMA professor in political science and public administration, John Nickerson, PhD. The scholarship is awarded to those UMA juniors and seniors majoring in political science or public administration who are residents of the state of Maine who have demonstrated scholarship of the highest order and who have the great potential to serve the public unselfishly. So Chelsea just continues to stand out. You know, she was Rookie of the Year clerk last year, and she's the recipient of this great scholarship. So again, really lucky to have her here in the town.
Congratulations, Chelsea.
On the job right now.
And I wasn't able to activate the video with an embedded link.
I wasn't able to activate the video either, to be honest.
Okay.
Sorry, could I just request we kind of like, work better? I can't see it.
Great, thank you.
That's better.
We can see if we can't hear.
Are you passing the sign up sheet, by the way?
I thought about a sign out sheet, but then I did not want to because that means everyone's touching the same document. I'm not lazy.
Hey.
Thinking.
So you're right.
Correct. You wanted to start with revenues?
Yep.
Okay. So, you know, the biggest standout is obviously, there's some slight decline in the ambulance revenues. There's also the decline in auto excise. With signing the warrants tonight, you'll notice that we are sending the state larger checks than we have recently, and it's because new sales, sales tax, we collect sales tax, but then we give it to the state. So excise we get to keep, agent fees we get to keep unless the state manages that, but sales tax we get back to the state. So it's always a good sign when we are writing to check larger amounts with the excise amounts that we'll get correlate with that. So that's starting to pick back up again. Correct me if I'm wrong, Sheriff. The way that the policy now stands is that even though the state of emergency continues, and there have been a previous executive order saying until the state of emergency is lifted, after that point, you have 30 days to register your vehicle. There was an amendment to that that basically says if your town office is open or if they allow for or have the capability to do online renewals, then you now are required to have your vehicle registered.
Correct. As of July 11th.
Right. So even though the emergency declaration has not been lifted, it is a requirement to now register your vehicle. So we have seen a slight uptick in that. Our homestead, our revenue sharings and other monies from the state have maintained. I think I communicated with you all a little while back. We get homestead in 2 different lumps. One lump is from last year, and then the following month we get the first lump for this year. So the check that we got in July was to close out 2019's fiscal year, and then the lump that we will get in this coming month is the first installment of the homestead for this fiscal year, and that's the one that everyone's kind of waiting for.
It'll be there 2020.
Right. So because they just closed their fiscal year out, that's when they finalize that, and they do, I think it's a 70-30. They'll do 70% payment beginning of the fiscal year, and then once that fiscal year closes, they'll complete with their 30% payment.
Okay.
So I mean, everything's kind of down, but not astronomically. Phil and I have talked about these finances often and talked with you all, and one of the frustrations is that as much as we would love to produce you documents that are an accurate reflection of the town's finances, it's difficult with the amount of manipulation. And then say, just for example, putting the revenue from the TAN that we just did with Machias throws everything completely off as far as bottom line percentages. And then we talked the other day about, well, what does that mean for our budget if we just import a budget line of $560,000 to offset that and basically have that at zero impact on what our projected revenues were. So we're not uncomfortable with the position that the town's in. That said, it is difficult to give you all as accurate a picture as we can as things morph over time.
Yeah, any question?
Yeah, I guess he partially answered it. I was asking to talk to me about real estate taxes, which you're showing year to date, we received them all,
So
which I know isn't true. And then same thing with the TAN. It ends up with a zero. We received, I gather, around $27,000 worth of taxes.
we
You don't show it
received
on there.
more than that. This was closed out of July.
It says 7 August or 7, 8/7/22.
Correct, but the way that we closed out July instead of year to date.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we didn't have anything in July. So we shouldn't have anything in the year-to-date received in revenue, right?
No, and then one of the things that also, the year to date, why that number is there, about it basically it offsets and puts it at zero. The question becomes, how do we want to import these numbers at the beginning of crafting this document? Real estate taxes aren't known by the time we finish the budget or even by the time we pass the budget at town meeting. And so Phil goes through and does exactly what I told him to. Here's all the revenues that we accounted for in the budget process. Here's all the expenses we accounted for in the budget process. Please go into Trio and enter all of these numbers accordingly. We have no number for total real estate taxes.
Right. So there should be nothing in year-to-date.
Yeah, I don't know why that's there.
So the
Property taxes are being fully paid when it comes. That's just the accounting practice. Because you're always gonna get them.
So that's maybe why they're there. Maybe it's
Well,
a
that's
Trio software.
Trio's designed to reflect that.
Trio has that. built into their system.
But the reason there's no budget number there is because by the time I asked Phil to fill all this in there, we have no realistic number. We could put in last year's number, but
We could put in one now. We could do one now.
we can. And then that again just gets to general questions of if we start fiddling with that budget column. But then this is Trio. This isn't substantive as it relates to certain parts of our audit. It's not directly connected to our budget.
Well, Trio says that, in fact, as John says, that it's all received and we should get 100%. Because
Well, there's no budget, but there's no, nothing. So that percent is 100% of budget year to date. But let me stop for a minute.
Okay.
You have taken on a project to give us managerial level reporting rather than give us the general, what is effectively the general ledger. How's that going?
General managerial budgetary.
Financial reporting. And I even offered to help.
Appreciate the reminder.
All right, let's work on that before the next meeting.
Definitely.
I have a question.
Sure.
What's the pattern of state revenue share? When do they pay?
Monthly.
Okay, so through July, correct?
Correct.
They paid $60,827.
Correct.
And they paid $11,097 in July, right?
Which was roughly $2,000 more than that same month last
Well, yeah, so the state aid, their commitment last for their fiscal 2020 was $126,000. So we should have gotten half of that through the end of June. If they're currently their payment, or are they a month in arrears? It's 1 point.
I think that it's not linear. It's a percentage of the taxes that are paid in the state. So there's different due dates for corporate income taxes. If you look, go back and look at it,
Yeah.
You can't multiply 11 times 12.
Yeah. They don't take a projection divided by 12 and cut us checks for that.
Okay, so, just for everybody's information, the last year, their fiscal year 2020, they were going to share with us $126,000. Effective July 1st, that number has dropped down to 111. So, that's their projection. It seems that they lived up to their projection for their fiscal 2020. More or less. Yeah, given the actual that we've done. So between now and the end of the year, we're looking at
July.
half of 118.5, or no, we're looking at half of 111. So, well, this is important because if they meet their commitment, then we're gonna overachieve our budget for state revenue, which is good, because we're gonna underachieve on both excise and ambulance billing.
Remember, we budgeted.
We budgeted 90. Right, so right now, we're looking at 118 from the state to offset what is gonna be likely two shortfalls on the revenue side.
Oh, no, no, I would caution you to, how do I say this gently? Caution you not to think that when they are desperate for money, that they would cut revenue share.
Oh,
In 21, I'm not in 20.
I don't believe them until we run checks in the back. Actually. Okay, everybody happy with the tax bills that we sent out to you last week? What?
You happy with that?
Oh, yeah.
Is anyone ever happy with their tax bill?
Okay, all right, so in summary, overachieving state revenue, underachieving a couple of others, and let's work on, so that we don't have to read 150 line items in order to make sense of this. Extraordinary spending, or are we just on track?
We're on track. The only place where so Brian, after we passed the budget, Brian and I talked there, and I think he communicated with you all, there were some decent expenses, pagers that he wanted to purchase, that were all in the budget, approved by the budget. So basically, if there's an uptick, it's people that were deferring things that hadn't yet been approved at town meeting and then making those purchases. Public Works and what Jerry's doing, there's one culvert that needs to be replaced on Westbrook Street. After that, we both feel comfortable that he has the money to do that. And then after that's done, I do feel he's gonna be pretty close to needing to monitor his budget. So he came in to talk with me about it. Do the project, we have money for that, but following that project, he and I are gonna sit down and more carefully look over the road budget and see what he has money left to do for the remainder of the year.
Tell us about the $38,500 grant.
So the Keep Maine Healthy, it's CARES Act money from the federal government administered by the state. Just like the FEMA reimbursement, it's a reimbursement. And so there will be a period of time under which we will show those expenses on our books, but there will be a reimbursement for that. We are going to be we put in for the bulk of the money to be on wages, kind of the human resources, the communication, that more intimate working with businesses. So our plan is communicate with every business in town and ask them how they're doing. Do you need help coming up with a plan? We have bought ourselves with some of this money additional time for our code enforcement officer, who's our health officer, Betty at emergency management, and also the intern for any assistance that he may be able to provide. We now have monies to pay folks additional hours to work specifically with local businesses. If they say they're fine, then they're fine. If they say, hey, we're a child care facility and we want to reopen, but we're having some difficulty figuring out how to manage our space, how to manage this and that, working with the gig store, working with Atwoods and the co-op. So we didn't know if we were gonna get the money or not. So the plan was catalog all businesses in town, communicate with them. If they say that they're good, then we'll indicate that in a total business sheet. If they want additional assistance, we have money now to work with them to try to make sure that they've got indications on the ground for 6 foot physical distancing. And then there's a public information campaign that we're gonna do, reinforcing certain CDC guidelines, but also trying to do a good push on general health and wellness and items that naturally increase your immune system. So if you happen to do everything right but still get COVID, you give yourself that better fighting chance by having your body.
When you applied,
Mhm.
the thing I read from was that you had to specify what it was gonna be used for. Yep. And so I assumed that when you use it, you've got to go and validate you've actually used it.
We have to submit all invoices for reimbursement, whether that's a physical item that we purchased or a payroll expense.
And the officer in charge, officer on deck, is that covered as part of incremental?
No, that would, all of those have been cataloged under the FEMA reimbursement. This is a separate, so now we have two separate federal government funded revenue streams to offset COVID expense. The FEMA stuff doesn't necessarily cover Mo trying to work with businesses to make sure that they're good to go on that stuff, but the state keep me healthy monies do.
Have you received any guidance from anybody on how to deal with, I shouldn't have it at this point, how to deal with the suspension of the payroll deductions for FICA and Medicaid that we issued by executive order? I assume you're not gonna run off and do it tomorrow.
No. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, it's still in question whether that's a valid executive order at this time. So everything my understanding is folks are in a holding pattern until there becomes better clarification by Congress.
I'm just curious if MMA or anybody would weigh in on that.
No, the last thing I saw from MMA, was what I forwarded to you all. That's the only communication from Steve Gove that I've received since the weekend.
I guess I would just like, personally, before, if and when you decide to do that, then notify the board. I'm certain that would be a problem.
Oh, I totally agree. And I guess we just can't continue as if that executive order didn't exist. Or, I don't know.
That's why, but I think we need to be thinking about it. That's why we're here.
Just a question on the building and ground supplies, that one is 10 grand. Is that where the FEMA
That's where I've been watching
administrative?
basically everything, as well as,
And you've already submitted it for that money reimbursement?
no, not yet.
I mean,
Nope.
that's for the first piece of FEMA.
No, and like I brought up to you all before, the way that the FEMA reimbursement works is there's a $2,300 trigger that you have to hit to be eligible. The concern has always been, we know that we're gonna hit that first trigger, but if we submit and then we incur additional COVID-related expenses, highly unlikely that we'll clear 2,300 again. So we just closed out all department heads making final purchases to have that be as much as it is. And I actually just talked with the intern today because we found out about the CARES Act. I'm going to use some of the CARES Act money from the state to have the intern assist in, it's a pretty tedious process to enter all the items into that FEMA reimbursement. Not undoable, but he's a mathematics major, and it's going to be a 1 hour YouTube class, and then he and I are going to work on, these are all the expenses that we had, here's all of our invoices, here's the format that it needs to go into, and and then he's gonna help with the data entry, and we talked about starting that process next week. The last thing was another PPE cabinet for the ambulance department to store masks, gloves, sanitizers, etc. But we're done with all COVID-related expenses for the FEMA. And one of the other reasons of feeling very comfortable to now submit that FEMA reimbursement is if for some reason something happens and we need to do more COVID-related expenses, we can now do some of them anyway under the Keep Me Healthy, or Keep Maine Healthy expenses.
All right, we drained the financials, so let's move on. Merle.
Hi. Thank you all for allowing me a little bit of time tonight. I'm here to talk about some of the changes that are being needed perhaps and that we've noticed on Island Road, which is the main road running through Spruce Head Island. We happen to live right on the road, which some of you know, so we have a clear view of everything that's going on. First of all, I'd like to thank you for whatever you had to do with a police presence being on the island for the first time all summer long, and for getting the shoulder mowed to allow a little bit more safety for our walkers. We've been working together with the residents on the island as well as with Atwoods to try to maintain a good neighbor environment around all of these issues. We keep a list of, we being my husband and I keep a list of over 60 full-time and part-time residents of the island. And we had a Zoom call a couple of weeks ago to try to get some information from all of them in terms of what their feelings were about some of the issues. And the primary issues that came up were blind corners, and I have a slide that I'll show you in just a minute. Blind corners, the speed, there was some discussion about how would we go about reducing the speed. We talked a little bit about speed bumps. It didn't seem like it would be a very good idea given the truck traffic that goes on the road. Then it was suggested perhaps they could be temporary so they could be removed in the winter for plows. We don't know enough about it to be able to speak directly to that. We were wondering if the select board knew that the trucks on the island are now 53 feet long. They can barely make it around the corner. If they had to stop because there was a couple with a baby carriage and a dog on a blind corner, they wouldn't be able to do that. So our primary focus and my reason for coming to you today is to talk about our concern for the people who are here temporarily. First, I want to tell you what the people who are homeowners here are trying to do. And that is to put in, if they're renting property, to put into their booklets that serve their renters guidance about the fact that this is a working island, that there will be trucks on the island, they will go faster than you might like them to, and some of them are enormous. And so they're building into those directions or information some ideas about what they might do. Our concern is that there are areas about which we have no control and no place for people to go if they're faced with an oncoming truck or going too fast or one of these enormous 53-foot trucks. Let me just pull up one corner of particularly on a screen here and show you what I mean. This particular corner, you can see that there's a bush sticking out first of all, and we're not even certain whose responsibility is it to cut that bush back. But if you were walking there and a truck came toward you and another one came behind you, I'm not sure where you would go. A big concern that we have is that somebody is going to get hit. We're very concerned about that. I took another photo of it. If you give me a second, I'll try to pull it up coming from the other direction. Let me just see here. I apologize if I'm not doing this quickly enough. Can you see this? So here is, I walked this with my daughter, and I wanted her to stand on where you would normally stand on a shoulder. And this is what would happen. There are holes in the road here that people try to avoid. And if they try to avoid them and anybody is on the other side of this bush, they're going to get
Earl, your screen share is not working.
Yeah, Merle, you have to hit your screen share again.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Let me try that again. I'm sorry. I'm a little bit novice at this part of it. Let's see. Okay. How's that work? Do you see it now?
No.
No?
No, yeah,
I am sharing it.
I see it.
Okay. So this is the same bush that we showed with someone standing behind it as if they were walking on the. Then when you think about, I'm not going to put a whole bunch of slides up because I think it's a little bit complicated to see it all. My point being, there are 3 areas on the island where if you are walking facing the traffic, you are as much risk as if you weren't, because we know when we walk the island all the time that you need to cross over when you're coming up around a corner on a hill. You have to cross to the other side. People who are here for 2 weeks or whatever in the summer just don't know that. We're doing the best we can to try to get that information out to them as part of their packet when they arrive, and getting cooperation from the residents. So what we need help with, I think, is there a way to put a sign up that includes sharing the road, meaning bikes, walking, and vehicles? Is there a and I don't have answers to any of these. Is there a possibility, or would it help at all, do you think, to lower the speed limit to 30? 35 is not what people go. Most people, I would say 80% of the people that start at the top of the hill are probably building up to 45 miles an hour by the time they go past our house. So I don't know about that. I wonder about when the shoulders, such as they are, got mowed. It was the first time all summer long. So up until that time, there was no place really identified for people to step off of the road if they felt threatened in any kind of way. So we wonder whether or not gravel shoulders, particularly in those areas that are difficult to see around, if that might be possible. That's it. We had a number of people responding with ideas of things. We don't have all of the answers. We're doing what we can. We're trying to be good neighbors with Atwoods and the co-op, but I think we need a little help.
I was just adjusting my mind. Oh, sorry.
I can't hear you, by the way, Select, and I can't, your voices are very weak. I mean, you're far away or something.
Well, I do think there's several. One, I'm very familiar with the road, of course. For example, the speed limit sign right in front of the Edgewood house, you can't see it because it's behind the bushes. There's a couple of driveway ahead signs that hidden by bushes. I think just in general, we need to do a major bush cutting project there. And I just heard Owen say that the public works budget was stressed. So that's too bad. But I don't think it's just the island road. I drove a lot of Beach Road today, and some places where the limbs are actually touching my truck when I first stayed in the lane. So I think
Westbrook is probably the most dangerous.
well, Westbrook we've done a lot in the last couple of years. Yeah, but I think in terms of the speed limit thing, you can request the DOT, they have to offset it. Unfortunately, that process used to take they had about a year and a half back on. I know Dave Allen is the safety engineer for this division 2 of DOT, and he'll put you on the list. But that could be a two-edged sword. He could also increase it. So that's a possibility. I'm not saying that would happen.
I'm wondering if it would be possible to put together a small task force. One of you, perhaps, maybe Mr. Grierson, and a couple of the residents here to kind of figure out what to do, if anything.
Earl, can you let John finish, please?
I'm sorry, it's very hard for me to hear who's talking. So I
Mrs. Walter, could you let John finish?
thank you. I couldn't hear him.
But in terms of the bush mowing, we usually do much earlier in the year, my memory serves me right. And this year was very late, and I think, usually do it, I thought, around July 4th. Correct me if I'm wrong on that one, but But I agree, it really got out of hand. We should be back on next year on that schedule. But the idea of shoulders, grab a shoulder, massive. We certainly could look into something. But I will also say that on the really bad inside corner, just below the Lobster Cove, the Lobster Co-op parking lot, we did widen that out 2 feet. Oh, last time we paved it several years ago. But I do think the signs, share the road signs would be a good idea. Another thought that I had, I don't know how involved this would be, but there's those 2 lights down here at Field of Buckles that have the solar panels. And I was wondering if we could, number one, I'm not sure we own them. I assume we do because they're part of the school, but just if possible thought is we could put one of those in on the road and change it to, not school crossing or children crossing, but 30 miles an hour and just have it flash. Even if you had a sensor or something going over 30, you'd probably get shot out with a gun, but it was a thought.
Like the existing speed limit sign.
Those are my initial thoughts.
What about the mirror on that corner, Merle? I thought that was like the #1 suggestion from your group.
I forgot to mention that. A mirror would help. A mirror would help on 2 of the corners for sure.
So I've learned more about traffic calming in the last 2 weeks than I ever wanted to in my lifetime. And the state, we can petition the DOT to come look at the speed limit. I thought I read that they're supposed to do that every 5 years, and I'm sure that they're 105 years of time. So let's take that as an action item. They also have something to say about signage too, don't they? Get the rule on that as well? No, that's totally us. Bruce?
I don't understand most of this. The original email that went out was talking about speed bumps, which I was extremely against, and let Merle know that. And Merle emailed back that they got a number of suggestion that that was not good. But now signage to me says sign pollution. And I've lived there, I've lived just off of Island Road for almost 20 years. As far as I know, there's never been an accident, car to car, car to truck, car to person, car to bicycle. I find the signage not necessary. I find the difference between 35-mile-an-hour speed limit and a 30-mile-an-hour speed limit negligible. Nobody pays attention to the speed limit anyway, but I used to walk that road and a mile from my house to the post office and back a mile every day. I never had any problem. Well, excuse me, once. But the trucks always gave me a wide berth, and by trucks I mean pickups, gave me a wide berth. The big trucks from, I can't think of that company, Northwest something, Northeast something, they'd always honk and wave. I wave. Anybody that you waved at, they always were like, hi. I don't find there to be a problem. And I think this is much ado about nothing. I'm sure there's more in my head that I can't get out right now, but that's my 2 cents worth.
That's worth more than 2 cents. What you just said is worth more than 2 cents.
Is that good?
Yes, it is.
Thank you very much.
Just
So the,
just a data point I provided into the board I got from Captain Hickam. As per the Knox County Sheriff's Department's internal records since January of this year. Now this isn't giving the whole picture, but the sheriff's department has done 10 traffic stops on Sprucehead Island, and 5 of those stops did net a citation for those individuals.
So Earl, Sheriff Farrell is here, he's actually behind you. And the one thing that stood out, and here are my learnings, not that any of them are absolute. Speed bumps, DOT and the feds recommend speed bumps only in the case of parking lots and driveways. Speed humps are more effective and more expensive, except for one thing. Speed humps are not particularly effective at slowing down pickup trucks, which are the big offenders on the island.
Yeah.
The number one
Yeah.
deterrent to speeding is enforcement. And I'd like them to comment on what, if anything, we can expect going forward, and what his observations are, and whether he agrees with what I just said.
Yes, I do. I've studied the same things. I talked to Dave Allen today from DOT, and a former request from the select board can get a traffic study down there. But I did say to him that I was going to put we have a speed trailer. It'll go down there. It's a lighted sign. It keeps track of the speed. It's somewhat, because that sign's there, it lights up, there's a warning, so that will tend to slow people down as long as it's there. Now, it's not something that we can keep there forever, but it will give us an idea of what the speeds are on the road. He did say, he took a quick look. There have been no accidents in 3 years. That's as far as he went back as of today. There haven't been any accidents. They did look at it a number of years ago for the speed. But the only thing like John said, is if you request a study, they come down and do a study. Because there haven't been any increase in accidents, so there isn't a large number of accidents, they take a percentage of the average speed. And if in the 85 percentile, if 85 percentile are traveling that road at 40 miles an hour, without any increase of accidents, they could potentially bump the speed to 40 miles an hour. That's a danger of having the traffic study done. But I did say to Dave that I'm more than willing to put a sign down there. I'll let the guys know. And I say this in many towns, the increase of speed across the board in general, it's between speed and distracted driving in any town. Our problem is Friendship has the same issue, Washington has the same issue, Appleton has the same issue, Cushing has the same issue. And typically there's 3 deputies on at any time in the county of Knox, besides the 4 towns that have their own municipalities. So I honestly, we do our best to be here, but we also have, just on the mainland side, we have 10 other towns that we patrol with 3 guys. And the distance from here to Washington. We do try to pay attention to that, but it's a matter of time, and we try to pay more attention, but that's the best we can do. I will put signage to get a study done, somewhat of a study. I'll report back to Dave, and that can help trigger too if we should look at potentially doing an official DOT traffic study to see what that speed should be.
We appreciate the effort that you put in earlier in the year, because I know that it helped. And I know it sent a message. Another comment about that, Andrew?
Andrew Stancho, Spruce Around. I think I heard most of it, and I think I agree very mostly with what John Field was saying. I don't understand why there has been no cutting of the grass and cutting back the limbs. One of the big problems is that people, or summer people especially, are walking up and down with their dogs on leashes. They don't want to walk in grass. They don't know that we don't have any bad snakes here. They don't know a lot about what's going on. So they just walk basically on the pavement with their dogs sort of running in front of them in a wide arc. That's dangerous, and it's dangerous, I think, for a lot of the the pickups, the working people on the yard. So my recommendation, I don't know why we're not cutting back the fact of the distance away and making the shoulder wider. So my recommendation would be to do that. And I'm glad the sheriff's been around more. Seen him a few times. And I wonder whether he knows who's laying that rubber down on the road.
I wish I did.
Whether that poses a problem. And, I think that's dangerous for that person. And I would suggest that we lower the speed limit. It takes a year and a half to go 25 miles an hour. So yeah, I think that would be good. And it's only a mile from one end of the island to the other. Not a big deal to lower the speed limit.
Just to clarify, we can't lower the speed limit, like the sheriff was saying. We work with the state, and the state shoves into a rubric all of the applicable data, and then we're now subject. And so I think what the sheriff was indicating was there is possibly more of a likelihood that the speed limit would be increased than decreased. I mean, best case scenario almost is it stays the exact same, but it's highly unlikely that it would be lower.
Yeah, but they have a video about how they go about this. And one of the things that the video shows is they basically look at how fast people are driving and then take 85% of that and say that's the new speed limit. Go ahead.
About whenever it was 8 years ago, we built a new bridge. We didn't build it without any information. We built it on the basis that there was a traffic count. And that traffic count was something like 1,250 a day. Well, state road DOT doesn't come down every day. They don't come in the summer when you have masses of people walking down the road. I think that any evaluation should be dependent on some kind of account that's more related to the realities out of winter traffic than of summer traffic, because that's when somebody's going to get killed.
Well, as far as the mowing, the other thing is the sight lines were recommended in the comprehensive plan 10 years ago to be taken care of, and obviously that,
Well, those bushes were trimmed way back several years ago. It's been a long time now, particularly on the inside corners. And I don't think that that's that big a project or that expensive. If we particularly should concentrate on the inside corners. But again, it isn't just, in my mind, it isn't just Sprucehead Island Road. Waterman Beach Road is probably maybe worthless and in terms of bush cutting. But I think the three biggest things we can do is trim back the bushes fairly aggressively on the inside corners, getting all the signs visible, enforcement as much as the county can, and just I don't think that and mowing the roadsides early enough in the summer. So you're right, with the young people couldn't step off the road. I walked. We almost positive usually mow around July 4th. I think those are the three things we need to concentrate on.
also, I put in your packet a draft letter to Atwoods and to Cola, defining the problem, asking for their assistance. So that was should have done the nice ask before we sent the sheriff out. So I'm looking for your concurrence. I'll track myself down and give it to Travis. And
you need to include the clues on there as well.
yeah, yeah.
I would just add my thoughts on this. I also live off of Island Road, just so you all know. And for some time, my wife and I walk on it 2-3 times a week. Still, one of the things, anything we can do to raise awareness, I think is good. And this conversation is worth that. Some of the responsibility still has to stay with the walkers. Because it surprises me how many people walk not facing the traffic.
Yeah.
When they're back to traffic, I'm going, how crazy can you be if you don't even see what's coming up on you? So I don't know how you educate that or how you change that, but raising the danger and the awareness of it's helpful. I think the trimming, the signs, I'm a little confused about whether we could change the speed or not, only because we got this email back from Peter Cloughlin, Director of Maine Local Read Center. He basically talked about speed bumps. He says DOT has zero involvement here. So that seems to me if we can put speed bumps in the road, it's our road, town business, he says, that we ought to be able to adjust the speed limit.
No, that's not, that's
Yeah.
not.
I can clarify a little bit.
Yeah.
There's two issues. Speed limit is strictly Maine DOT, with the exception of towns. A few years ago, they accepted towns that were more than 2,500. And then a special deal for those over 4,000. But they had to apply to be able to do it on their own, explain how they're going to do it, what their process was going to be. And then there was a list made of those towns. We're not on it. So Maine DOT has sole responsibility for determining the speed limit on any road, in any public road. Although they do talk a little bit about private roads, but that's another discussion. The other is, as far as signs, speed bumps, the town select board has sole responsibility for traffic. But the kicker is, you have to have an ordinance that gives you the authority and explains what you're going to do. So you can't just knee-jerk react to anything that happens. You have to have an ordinance that lays it out, which is a shameful segue into my later discussion. But,
It's okay.
so yes, and you can do speed bumps on your own if it's in your ordinance that you can do speed bumps on your own. But their advice, and when you do this, you're going to want to get the professional's advice. They're going to say, don't do speed bumps.
Yeah, I hear you, but it does seem a little odd to me that we could put speed bumps on a 50-mile-an-hour road.
Well, you don't have any 50 mile around.
That's okay. According to the rules, if we can put speed bumps in and they control the speed limit, there's a disconnect to me.
Yeah.
So if the state says you can go 50 miles an hour on that road, and we say, okay, we don't want to go 50 miles an hour, so we'll put logs in the middle of the road or something. We'll impede the roadway, as he talks about it. I mean, again, I'm being smart here, but
What they'll do is DOT will send you an advisory.
yeah.
And what they're going to try to lead you towards is other ways of flowing the traffic.
I'm not advocating speed bumps. I find the whole arrangement a little odd.
That ordinance authority belongs to the select board. It's not a town ordinance. We can do that with the three of us.
Technically, no,
We don't have an ordinance.
you can't do it without an ordinance, but you have the authority to do it. So you have to have an ordinance that specifies it.
Right, I thought.
And now, and I would check with MMA on whether or not that ordinance requires town vote. I don't think it does.
I don't either. I think we researched that with the working.
That's what I was gonna say. We looked into that recently. You're absolutely correct. It needs to be an ordinance. It's one of the few ordinances which does not require town meeting approval. You can throw it out at town meeting if you want to, but at a regular meeting of the select board, they can pass that ordinance with whatever they want.
Just to move this along to the progress. I'd like to make a motion that we request a speed study from NDOT and that we direct Owen to work with the road commissioner to see what he can do within this year's budget to trim the worst of the bushes on the inside on this road and any other town.
Before you complete your motion, can you
I
just?
just completed.
No, I heard a pause and a comma.
No, that's it.
Okay, so can you better clarify exactly the scope from the bridge, from the first turn,
No.
just Island Road?
Any town road.
Any town road?
Any town road on I'm leaving it up to the, my motion's intent is to leave it up to you and the road commission discretion. Within the limits of the budget that you have.
Oh,
To trim the worst inside corners to improve sightlines.
that I
don't want to make it
totally
overly complicated.
It was the getting the state to come and assess.
No,
That was
Island
the-
Road. Island Road.
I know there's a motion on it. Before I can even offer a second, I have to remind that there's significant repair and modification to Island Road that's going to take place. And I think any study that's done now is premature because the exact corners that you're talking about where we widened it are going to be adjusted as part of this.
Yeah, but I don't.
Renovation. So I would prefer that we not do a traffic study until Island Road is what Island Road's going to be.
clearing and mowing.
Clearing and mowing, I think,
That's just not dependent upon it.
exactly right.
Well, I didn't make a motion on the mowing. That wasn't in my motion, but definitely clearing. I really think it's gonna take a year and a half to get that study done. And I don't think where we're talking about straightening it, you're gonna be able to improve those sightline views. Like bushes. But,
No, that, but part of that is to improve the sightline.
okay. I'll be happy to draw the study.
I was just gonna, like I mentioned, I do plan on putting the trailer down there. It's an informal traffic study, if you will. It does track, I can take the data off that. It shows the effort, but there's also a sign there. The studies they do is a strip, rubber stripped across the road, so there's no warning to slow down. You're traveling. This one's gonna have a lighted sign that says slow down. But it will give us an informal study of what traffic.
It records the speed when the light comes on and tells it to slow down.
It was out here for a while.
Yes.
Were there any conclusions from that data?
I can find out. I don't know.
I talked to Captain Pink about it. Interestingly, one of the few things that he said that I was a little confused about, so that it blinks when you go over the speed limit, but it grabs additional data when you're 15 miles over the speed limit. Is that correct? Right. And he said there was no data of anyone going over 15 miles an hour with the speed limit, which helped reinforce to me that what we all view as vehicles moving at a certain mile per hour is often not reality. And he relayed to me a couple of examples of going with citizens that have been complaining about speeding. He's clocking them and he's saying, how fast do you think they're going? And, oh, they're going 70 miles an hour. No, they're going 53.
True. Well, we have a motion on the floor.
Oh,
I know. I amended it to.
Could you clarify that?
Could you restate the motion?
Without the speaker, I would just move this discussion along. I would move that the direct Nolan and the road commissioner to, within the limits that they can find officially subject to cut trim bushes on inside corners of any town road where the bushes are encroaching on the site line.
Second motion.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion?
Can we discuss?
Yes.
I don't understand the clarification of an inside corner, because to me, I have a lot of trouble with outside corners. Where Village Road meets Island Road, the Louis Dump property, you can't see, if you're coming down Village Road and go toward the island, you cannot see around to see if anything's coming toward you until you're more than halfway out into the road. Maybe the Louis Dumps have to do it, but maybe just pull back, cut back their thing. Also at the corner of Island Road and 73, you want to make a right, you want to make a left. You can't see the people coming around the corner at 73 because of the bushes that are on that corner. I can't, not in my car, maybe can in a pickup, but I can't see around.
I guess my feeling is we can leave this discussion to the town administrator. I think so. Pick the best places.
Yep.
And on private property, we have in the past contacted the residents and asked them if they would trim back their bushes, and we were successful. Yeah, not initially, but successful.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? All in favor?
Yeah, hold on, I got one thing. I'm representing the Sprucehead Fisherman's Call. I represent 60 fishermen. I'll drive every day to work, pickup trucks.
Who are you?
Casey Morrow, Operational Supervisor of Sprucehead Fisherman's Call. I'll address your problems. I'll put this letter in everybody's check next week. So they'll get it in 1 week.
Okay, don't do that yet. That's a draft letter, not a signed finished letter.
So let me know when I can send it.
That's your draft.
Okay?
That's my draft. There's typos in that, so let me.
It looks pretty good. Just let me know when I can send it. And as far as whoever brought up the 54-foot truck, I think you did. It is a very large truck. It comes to our facility We can't fish on Sunday. It's at our facility between 4 p.m. and generally leaving the island at 8 p.m. 6 days a week. So I can talk to that truck driver. He could warn at the entrance when he's leaving the island, those corners with a horn blow. That would allow people to get out of the way. I don't think he leaves the island or comes on the island at excessive speed. He's very large. We can't lose that truck.
My personal observation, the large trucks aren't speeding.
No, they're not.
I mean, the semis.
That's the trucks that are coming from, that I can speak for, leaving our facility, so. Owen can get a hold of me if you have any further questions.
Thanks, Steve.
All right, have a good night.
Thank you. All in favor? All opposed? Yep. Thank you.
Thank you. Anytime.
You want a motion?
No one knows how to get hold of me.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll move that we authorize the chair to sign a letter.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks a lot, Tim.
Anytime.
Any discussion? All in favor? And we also thank Tim for not counting above 50 at our town meeting. Okey dokey, Sandy.
Okay. All right, I'm here on behalf of the Ad hoc Conservation Committee, who in the past have submitted documents to go forward and to move beyond the committee into a commission. And I want to say that there's a number of our people here, Andrew, Randy, Ivan, and Linda are on the committee, and there's quite a few other people that are on the committee that are not here. But we've been working hard. Theo has done a bunch of water quality testing. There's groups that are going out saltwater, freshwater testing for quality coming into our waterways. We've installed tide gauges at the landing, storm surge protect, some sensors. Also looked at trash, trails. We've been out there doing some really good quality, actually scientific work, and I have some things for you to show that. But we also submitted revised bylaws for you, and these are some pictures. I'll leave these here. You guys can have that. Some of the water quality testing, storm surge things that have been going on. Some of the data that's already been collected, trash issues at the town landing. But right now we have a new missions statement, slightly revised from the previous one that we put together for you. Also new bylaws, taking in effect some of the main statute language that previously was requested. But what we really want to do is ask that you please consider fulfilling the comprehensive plan of March 2010. And that clearly stated that the Conservation Commission, that was part of the plan, which John, I think, and Jeff, you, and Penny, you did a really great job with that plan. It's a comprehensive plan. But at the end, there is a statement of one of the goals of the town was to establish a conservation commission. Clearly stated and intended. And not only that, there was a survey of the residents of town, and which is stated also in the comprehensive plan that 80% of the residents in town favored actions to preserve the natural environment and to take action going forward to do everything that we can. So it's widely supported in the town for this kind of activity. So we submitted some documents in advance for your approval and comments, and I'm sure the town is going to want to, there's going to be legal language that you're going to want to consider, but we very much would like to have the town consider appointing us from a committee to a conservation commission for further town, get the documents in line for further town vote in the future. And whatever it takes, is ordinance language we can provide from other towns, and Owen, you can get that as well. So we're here to ask you, please consider moving forward and looking at documents for approval to go forward for town vote.
Well, Jan has drafted an ordinance.
Yeah, and if I can speak to that, we have been moving forward really since you gave us the initial things.
Great.
It's not quite ready for your discussion because I've only just given it to my contemporaries this week. But I have a draft ordinance and I have a draft bylaws. I did take into consideration your bylaw input, the membership that you sent out, and your latest, I think, mission objectives.
Perfect.
So I've got those documents. My primary document was the main manual for conservation commissions,
Yes.
which references the legal side of it as well. So that's the language in the ordinance.
Perfect.
So I think we are moving, and it certainly would be my intent to have an ordinance ready.
Good.
For an ordinance review by committee, but the draft ordinance for review. So
That's great.
I know you probably hadn't heard all of this, but we have been moving out on it.
That's great news. So what could we expect going forward at this point? Would it go ordinance language? Tell us a little bit about the steps going forward once you approve your
Yeah,
language.
I guess I'm kind of new to this myself, but my expectation is that the three of us are going to be comfortable with the draft, and then I would see it go to the review committee as an ordinance. And I don't know if if it needs a planning committee or anybody else to look at it. And then we put it in a smooth copy at that point, ready to go before a town meeting.
That's
For
great.
approval. Once the town approves it, then if I understand from what I've read, then we, the select board, would be authorized to appoint the membership. The membership would be appointed in staggered years, so there's 7 members. And we also talked about associate members. The 7 members would be the voting members, the associate members. And then you would stagger 1, 2, and 3 year terms so that in the future, not everybody turns over at the same time.
Perfect.
Along the way, clearly, those of you that have been interested in this, we would welcome your review of it and input. But I think right now, it captures most of what you have in your bylaws. Maybe not quite the same detail. And certainly your mission statement is more detailed than I would put in an ordinance. The ordinance tends to be broad,
That's
a
fine.
broad skeleton that then the committee itself can put more meat on.
So isn't the proper process, however, for the board to decide that it's going to craft an ordinance for presentation? Now, that we're going to actually go forward with this, then we do the work for the verbiage. Now, the fact is that the prior board, whether we voted or not, were very much in favor of the idea of the conservation commission. So,
Like here, I don't know if you voted, but I agreed at a previous meeting to take on the drafting. And the board agreed to that.
Exactly. Well, my opinion, once we have a proposed ordinance, we would have to vote as a board whether or not to put it on the town meeting warrant, like we have to vote
Oh, yeah.
on anything.
Absolutely.
I don't have a problem concept of creating a conservation commission at all. I haven't had a chance to review your draft yet.
Right.
Yesterday.
Right.
But I do want to, I want to make one thing clear, because I get the sense that it isn't. We can't just take this group of 12 people and make them a conservation. Right. We create a conservation committee, solicit input who wants to be on it, and then the board will make a point. We can't, as a board sitting here tonight, commit to, well, first of all, there's 12 people on this, and there's only 7 slots, so that right.
Right.
It's an issue.
And
But we can't commit to even saying that a majority of these people will be on it. We don't even know who's gonna be on the board. So, and I get the feeling that there's a feeling that, you know, that the process is simply gonna take this group and make them the conservation commission. And I just don't want people to think that that's the process.
That's not implied in the work that Janice.
No, I understand that, but
So his draft here assumes that we never heard of Sandy Retzlaff and Andrew Smith creating something from whole cloth. And that's the process.
I just want people to understand. Oh, you do know who I am.
Of course I do.
I just want to thank you all for considering this. I don't think it's about the people, I think it's about the activity.
Yeah.
And at some point, as you say, it may not even be the same board. You're gonna face the need to name a group. And if there are volunteers available, I think who are professionals, who know what they're talking about, I think that group should be a group from which you choose your primary personnel. On the other hand, you need to have some people who are inspired by what they know about this area and how it works. And I think that the combination of those people will be the correct mix. I just want to underline one extraordinarily important thing. It has not so much to do with any of the activities we've already been involved in, including the water sampling. I'm a geologist, hydrogeologist, and every day I worry more and more about that dump up in mountains that is seeping the geologist I know potential for what that can do to this area, the water supply to people in this area, and the ocean beds and the wash. So we could have an incredible, it won't be COVID, but it could be bad. And I'm serious about that. It's that place has been fined for all kinds of problems. But nobody's worried about what they've done to the water and what the city of Rockland's done to the water. I'm very concerned about that, and I thank you all for supporting this area. I hope it moves on and we'll go.
All right, and we have something for the town. There's a group of maps that we ordered, that you all can have. We all have them, and they're brand new July 20th maps of all sorts of water quality, habitat things, and this comes from the state of Maine for everything about habitat. And they're also the lead organization that kind of helps conservation commissions and all the other environmental groups around the state. And these are for the town to post wherever you like. And so we wanted to give you a copy of what we have. All right.
And a quick, your maps are at Adventure Advertising right now, getting laminated, and I'm paying to laminate.
Oh, there's
We
some,
put them up on the walls, and I wanted, they're such good quality, and I didn't have a budget for laminating them, but it's not gonna be very expensive, so we should have them back in about a week, and the plan is to put them up here on that wall and that wall until the board tells me what's for.
While you're doing that, can you put the transfer station plan back up?
Sure.
We're trying to spend money on that adventure. Jeff, I think you're next.
Oh, that's right. The ordinance review committee has now met after the town meeting, so they have one meeting. It's more of an organizational, what are we gonna look at in the future? Original plan was as soon as the first changes that we made to the existing land use ordinance were approved at town meeting, we immediately go to work on doing some substantive changes to it, targeting our next town meeting. That's now being compressed. I think we'll still get there, but I'm just giving you a heads up that maybe come January, we say, it's a bridge too far, we're gonna have to push it out. Because it's a lot of work. But one of the things as we were going through what we thought needed to be changed in our existing ordinances was we came to that point in our charge that says we're charged with looking at existing ordinances. So your question about reviewing that ordinance or even looking at a traffic management ordinance, that's outside of our charter right now. We personally think that you should add that to our charter because we've got the willingness, the capability, and we think that some of the things we want to add to our land use ordinance would be better served possibly as it's a standalone. A lot of towns are doing tower ordinances that are standalone ordinances. Some of them are doing sign ordinances that are standalone. A few are even doing things like gravel pits and, which I don't want to go there, or solar panel ordinances as standalones. We're not convinced that all of it needs to be standalone, but we don't want to say, okay, this is something that needs to be a standalone, it's not ours, push it away and do some other stuff. So what I'm asking you right now is for the authority for us to review and possibly recommend ordinances that don't currently exist.
I agree, and I think solar farm is coming our way sooner rather than later. So really, what?
Yes.
Yeah.
I agree. But I think there's going to be a big one here.
Yeah. I don't give a piece of that action.
I'm not saying a municipal one, but our code officer has been working with developers that are exploring.
They're eager, they're all out there.
And we're a cheap state. We're a wicked cheap state.
So just so you know, we are meeting the second, I think it's the second Thursday. The planning board meets the third Thursday. So we're meeting the second Thursday of each month going forward. We are hoping to have open to the public for input kind of session. Tell us in September. Tell us what you think we ought to be working on instead of us just going in the direction we think we might be going in. And then doing other public outreaches throughout the rest of the year. Right now, we have a timetable that gets us to the next town meeting. But I think the last few months, we're probably going to have to meet twice a month, and it's very aggressive.
Yep, you have a written charter now for your.
Yeah, you guys gave us one last year, and in it, it said that we only worked on existing ordinances, review existing ordinances. So if you dust that off and just send us a note that the board has approved us going.
And if I had had better wherewithal, I would have given you all a draft of some proposed language tonight. I just spaced it on this one, but by the next meeting, it'll be simple to give you all an option on expanding your charter. And I would fully support it. It gives them, it's a great group of people doing good work, and it almost meets with what you've been indicating during this meeting you want to see from them.
Yeah, I would support it too. I really think it's almost a matter of semantics, whether it's a new ordinance or amending one. And if it makes sense to them if you're standalone ordinance, why restrict them sort of falsely, right? Because that's not in the charter. I would ask a question.
I think Jeff worked with charters. He drafted it.
I did not.
I started with something, worked with something, somebody gave me.
I made a couple of tweaks on it.
But I do have a question. Are your meetings, and perhaps Owen can answer this, are those meetings in that committee, are they, is there an agenda posted and sent out in the town email list and
I've been sending them out in the town email, but
I haven't seen the minutes or anything.
they took a hiatus during
Right.
COVID.
We haven't,
So
we
they,
haven't had a
you all have had,
But you do have minutes or?
yes, we have minutes for all of them. I think
Yeah.
you've got them posted.
yes, the ones that I mean, but you all just started.
Right.
Just started, they took a 3-month
Okay.
break. If
We're
not
waiting
more.
for the town meeting.
Yeah.
That's our excuse.
As a lot of the world did. Can I ask a question, since we have the 3 of the comprehensive plan from the last time veterans? We're overdue for a revision. But as part of 2021 planning, would you guys recommend that we wait until we get the census data
there ever is a census data. Because you use that very much in your last go.
Or you talking about the comprehensive plan?
Yeah.
Technically, they like to see them every 10 years.
Yeah.
I think the one we did in 2010, I think it had not been done for 30 years prior to that. So there aren't any police at the state saying, oh, your comprehensive plan is out of date. There used to be an organization that tried to prod you if it went out of date. That organization doesn't exist anymore. The KED's not going to push us for it. So the reality is, it's as good as it is until you feel that it's not satisfying the town. I will tell you, right now, it's still a very good, useful document. It gives us a roadmap for the ordinance, some pretty good specifics that can be pulled into it. It is a long, laborious, frustrating job to build a comprehensive plan. And so I would not go into it lightly just because the 10 years are up. I do it because you say something in our comprehensive plan isn't going to get us where we want to go, and we need to relook at it. So I recommend.
I just commend you guys because I think that's an incredibly fine piece of work that you all did. And it has stood the test of 10 years.
Right.
We also had financial assistance from the state, which allowed us to hire a consultant who was very instrumental in, not in making decisions, policy decisions,
right,
but in drafting it in the mechanics of it and so on and so forth. And I don't think those grants are available anymore.
There are grants available for it, but you have to go through CAD instead of Mid-Coast Regional Planning Commission. And CAD is not used to doing planning types of grants, although they say they will do it.
But I agree with Jeff. I mean, I think we definitely with incentives or use that, and I agree with Jeff that, particularly in the area of COVID and everything, they're not going to be knocking on our door saying, it's out of date.
So this will come up in our goals discussion in September. And so
Simply do a review of it.
Right.
And revalidate it. If in fact we see everything in it.
And that's what I've asked my committee to do, is go through and review with a fine tooth comb and then pull out the things that we can implement. Because you got to remember, the comprehensive plan is a pie in the sky what we'd like our town to be at some time in the future. But to get there, we have to build ordinances and policies and procedures that implement. The comprehensive plan doesn't implement anything. All it does is say, here's what you should or could. And then it requires you take the other steps.
Also a statement of values.
Yeah, well, that's the should.
Just a real quick on that, the grant that I just submitted for the land and water conservation, one of the requirements, if you reference your comprehensive plan, is to prove that the state still recognizes it as a valid comprehensive plan. And MCED went to some aspect or portion of the state, I just don't have it in front of me, and we are still viewed as having a proper comprehensive plan, and that's what I submitted. So just recently, we checked into that. I don't know when exactly that would expire. So beyond 10 years, however, the state still says we're good. I don't know if it's the quality of the work or what, but we just looked into it 2 months ago.
Would you like a motion to Jeff's request? Strike, please. I'll move that we strike from the ordinance committee mission the restriction that they can only work on amending existing ordinance. So I'm going to use the word.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? That's all in favor? Thank you, Jeff. Thank you. Penny?
Okay, First Pat Cemetery overseer. I just found out earlier this week that Joe Ferranini from Gravestone Matters is in Maine, has been in Maine, and is planning to come do work at Village this summer. And it will be the week before Labor Day. And with him come 6 to 8 volunteers from around the state, his groupies, who are happy to give us time just to work with Joe. So I'm very pleased. So it looks like we will be spending that part of the cemetery budget. I need to have a load of stone dust brought in, but I think I can get that donated, and it will have to. I'm going to talk to him because maybe it's something that I can just put in the back of his fish truck, so that makes it easy to move around the cemetery. If we dump it somewhere, we'll end up working on the other end of the cemetery ground, which means we have to go get buckets. Well, but I will talk to him about that. So, and maybe a load of loam. Last time he came, that loam was donated by Buck from Plants Unlimited. So maybe I can get another load of loam. That we will dump by the front, but not quite so heavy. Second was the recreation.
That's a question.
Yep.
Are you working strictly in Village?
Well, I'm going to have him go and look at a couple of problem stones.
Okay, so you're taking a comprehensive, and you're triaging the worst
Yeah,
cases, or?
and what we do up there is start with the most at risk. I mean, it would probably be thorndyke, but thorndyke is a hard one to get to, and the stones there, the inscriptions are lost. We have records of them from Mac Jackson. So unless they're, in danger of falling, there's not a lot we can do there.
And that was the one that was actually coming to mind, we didn't forget about that.
And I did take him back there, and he was drooling at the thought, but I think the money is best spent majority in the oldest part of the building, where we have stuff right at risk right now that could go down in the next big blow. So, but yeah, see, I drag him around and make him look at stuff, and he's one of these enthusiastic guys who will just drop everything and say, nope, we got to be right here, right now. There's one in Williams that I hope we can get erected, and pin, glue, and all the stuff that needs to be done there. Yeah. Okay, recreation.
Just before you move on.
Okay.
If you get donated loan, for example, or stone dust, we should accept that donation. The select board should, so let us know if people are donating that, so we can formally acknowledge it.
Okay.
And then put it in the record that we accept the donation. I feel like the other.
So, well, last time Buck brought the loan, and I thought he built the town, but he didn't. So I didn't realize it was a donation. Recreation was the grant you applied for the tennis court, Right. That was my first question. Exercise class is now meeting on the paved part of the playground at Guilford Butler School instead of the parking lot here, which is great because it's not a parking lot, it's behind the school, so there's a little bit of privacy. Not much shade, but we have canopies and whatnot, and some of your chairs. We know we're working on chairs. It's just getting going. It's been very hot. We haven't brought back the most at risk, but we are spacing with masks on for an hour on Friday mornings at 10 o'clock. And so far, so good. And the last one was Owen had talked to me about becoming a playground inspector. Because that's something that needs to be done up there. And I would be happy to do that if it has to be a town employee, but I also thought that maybe a volunteer could take that over. And I did talk to Scott Johnson, who said he would be willing to do the training and do that for the town. Thomas Recycle, but he lives in.
Yeah, I know it.
And,
I'm on the transfer station.
And you know.
well, it seems like a good fit. He would realize metal issues and whatnot. Garden.
I just personally feel that's something that Owen can work out. Well, needs to.
So we left in the budget the payment of baseball fees, right, that are not gonna be spent. Keep that in mind. Because we do have the authority to move things. Sorry.
In the recreation budget. Not a lot of money.
What, 900?
$900.
Maybe we could buy chairs for the exercise class and bring back your folding chairs.
I would support that, then I don't have to hear the firefighters.
I know.
Oh, wait. Really?
But I can have them here in 5 minutes if we need.
There's a lot of chairs missing that are usually in here.
Yeah, very good for Butler School. Being the exercise class there. The community garden's coming along well. The harvest will begin soon.
Looks pretty lush. Do you have enough weeders?
Yes, we do. Actually, the big pile in the back is a donated load of compost from Jim Keller. And that was delivered by J.K. Kellogg and Chet Grierson. And that was given to us. And it is growing these strange, luscious weeds. But the Japanese beetles are eating those weeds, so we're leaving them be. And they're leaving the tomato plants now, so.
I have a wood shop that you can have. All you gotta do is come get it.
I do too.
Mark would appreciate it.
I do too. So we had Jim Kellick and Chet Grierson volunteer their material and labor to bring the compost. We had Kenny Elwell for a nominal fee until the rockiest soil we've ever seen. And he did, it's roughly 80 by 30 feet. It was huge, and we expected. So he went above and beyond. The generous donors to the mass board paid for the fencing, plus $50 from Scott Johnson and Beverly Sinclair, and some from Arthur Alley. And Arthur Alley and Scott Johnson put the fence up. So that was quite a benefit. We had plants come from Ann Norman, Catherine Bentheim, Ann and Rich Norman, Nancy Goslin, Kathleen Winslow, and Martha Carlson, our 94-year-old water. She's something else. She lives at Westbrook and is taking on keeping track of that. So we will start to harvest, and we are going to put it out on the table in front of the school, and if there's an abundance that doesn't get taken away, we'll take it to the food pantry. So that's been fun.
Just like we've done with the landscaping project out here, please communicate with me if it feels appropriate, and I'm happy to draft up something to provide to the board so that we formally recognize folks that gave their time and energy to
Okay, my last thing is library. The reason I'm having done it. And the book sale is going extremely well. We have potential to make a lot of money. And as we have the sale, more books arrive. We have a room full of fabric, more fabric arrives, so it's kind of rolling along. You know, I sell a bunch and get a bunch, and so it's really worked out very well. So I am now having open hours 9 to 12 on Saturdays, plus by appointment, which I've done both. I had 2 Saturdays open. Last Saturday was the second one with the sign out front. And it worked out very well. There'd be one come in and one was just checking out. And then, you know, it worked very well. Since we're spread out in 3 rooms, there wasn't any danger of being too close to one another. I have hand sanitizer and gloves available. People use the hand sanitizer when they come in and gloves if they would like to, and when they leave. So that's all worked very well. Library hours, I'm continuing by appointment only, at least through Labor Day. At this point, I am not comfortable with putting the flag out and leaving the door open. Because we get a lot of transient population that just pops in to use the bathroom or wants to know how to get to the Gelston Lighthouse, and it leads to us having too many people in that room at one time. So I'm planning to continue by appointment only. Or curbside pickup, we're doing that too. Or mask board pickup, we put it out by the mask board and they pick up that way. So.
What about kids programming in the fall?
Pardon?
Do you have kids programming plans for the fall?
Well, the kids are coming for the story hour kids, but we're not having an indoor story hour. We're doing it outdoors, very shortened. And they come in a few at a time and check out a book that they keep at school, but no big crowd of them in the library at any one time. The pastor of the Sprucehead Church is reading stories online on Facebook. And we've been able to hand that out to a lot of the public story hour parents, and they're very happy with that. We just need to play this by ear. We don't know if school is starting, if the school agers at the preschool or summer camp, if there's going to be a fall camp. We just gotta wait and see. And my last thing was that there is the Historical Society Library flea market extravaganza that we canceled. Left a lot of vendors distraught. And we have offered them the lawn on Saturday for their do-it-yourself craft market. So they come in and they set up and then they go home for a small donation to the bowl for splitting between the historical and library. So 9 to 2 on Saturday.
So you had that last Saturday and you've got to repeat this Saturday?
Yeah. And I think that's it.
Amy?
Hi.
You're not muted. Okay.
Yep. Speak loudly.
I had to unmute. So July's monthly report, we actually were up on calls this month compared to what we have been. So we had 19 calls. And you've already hired the 2 people that we have on the list here. I was asked to kind of tally up what we had for runs last year compared to this year. Last year at this time, end of July, we had 157 calls. This year we're at 98. So we're down, which hopefully that means that people aren't being sick. But hopefully it's not just people aren't calling because of the COVID situation. Because we did have some of that. People were waiting too long. So other than that, we have our trainings. We're starting back in person, but using social distancing and masking this month. If people aren't comfortable coming in, we are going to have the Zoom option so they can get their CEHs and stuff like that. That's really all I had for this month. If you have any questions for me.
I want to make sure, you know that we had 284 ambulance calls last week, which kind of a huge increase. It's running way under that for understandable reasons so far. Do you have a sense, the article in the New York Times today about people not going to hospitals and then suffering serious illnesses for not having done that? Do you have a sense that that's holding people back here? Because you mentioned that the other services are way off as well.
Yeah, I think people are kind of waiting too long or waiting to call their physicians and doing a lot of the Zoom, telemedicine conferences and that kind of stuff. So they feel safer with that, as long as they're not to the point that they can't breathe and they're waiting too long to call us. But that's what people are saying, is that people the hospitals are also like 25% down on patients, that they normally see at this time of the year. So I think people just aren't going to the hospital.
And your shift coverage is on track.
Yep, we've covered all of our shifts. We haven't. Yep, we're doing well on that aspect. So I know Janet offered before about helping me do the operations manual again. I know we looked at it last year, so I'm gonna send you it again, and just, there was some things I updated that you gave me. So I fixed them and I'll ship it back out to you guys if that's okay.
No, thanks.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Amy.
Thank you.
Okay, Owen, take us through item 9.
So recognition of volunteers and donors for town office beautification project, not really needing a vote on the letter of recognition for those folks. The only thing that I'll add to that draft is I did send it off. Sandy Retzloff took a look at it. I had to call up Jeff. We were building the thank yous off of what I could recall and checks that we had received, but that didn't explain the full picture. So Jeff filled in some of the Lions Club folks. Sandy filled in some additional folks that gave up their time. And so not provided to you here is a more comprehensive just listing of individuals. And then Sandy was kind enough to alphabetize them for me. So none of the the only difference, I don't know which draft you're looking at, in a draft that I have that has all the right names or more names, I do indicate how much in total the town has received. It's right before the sentence that says this is an ongoing project and we could still accept monies for phase 2.
Should I send that one out?
What
you're talking about? Did you send that stuff?
It's exactly like that.
But different.
Sandy got me the new names like 5 minutes before the meeting.
So the current one has the South Thompson Lions Club?
No,
Because the benches, I would assume, came from the South Thompson Lions Club.
the new one has the Lions Club, yes. That one has individual lions, but does not indicate. So the new one recognizes Travis Wilson Landscaping, the Lions Club, in addition to individual lions, and then more folks, with the only language change being I added how much we've received to date for donation. But I can take that out if you want.
Was that in our packet?
No, it came separately, and I can't find my copy.
I don't think I saw.
I don't have the latest version.
I don't think I saw anything.
No, it was page 2 of the draft statement for the skate park. So there were two draft
Oh,
statements.
it's on the back.
It's on the back, yep.
So this, we got this tonight.
Yes.
I should send out this.
Yeah, I thought
You said it was an overview. I did some wordsmithing, I just got edits.
Thank you.
Did you catch our being around the fence? Not that.
I don't know.
Town of South Thomas. Town of South Thomas.
It's
gratitude, yes. Not our gratitude.
So, I have a process question. Of an old veteran. We set up an account to receive those donations. So do we still need to accept them? Formally, because we haven't done that.
I mean, I think if you made a broad set of
Yeah, Walter and I discussed this. We were trying to figure out whether each check needed to be accepted. I threw out the concept that where you empowered us to do the project, set up an account, you, by that vote, allowed me to accept and deposit all of those.
I would just. So now it is a one lump sum. The total was we accept that with the others in the budgets of each individual.
Oh, yeah.
It's 2,200, and it's in the latest version, and I'm sorry. Yeah.
What, you know what's left in that account?
We left out 17, what was the Plants Unlimited?
Look at the, bill from Travis and make sure we cover it.
The only reason that it got a little confusing with Plants Unlimited, they sent us a bill that included taxes, and then they sent us a check paying us back for the taxes. Travis is 600, and then the other, we're still under. I will be able to pay Travis with, I'm almost positive we'll be able to pay Travis. And then we'll have a handful of dollars left, and then we'll continue to solicit and accept any donations from folks for phase 2. So I will incorporate these notes, send out, it's a communication, so it's not really an official.
You just put it on the website.
Put it on the website, might try to see if I can get it into the paper, just if they'll do a, a nicety, it would be nice to have some good news in the paper.
Send it out to the electronic notice, so.
Yep. Only because, oh wait, no, it's under agenda change, so we'll take it to skate park later. Item B, in your packets, you have really just the basics of the mechanics behind section 2528 of Title 30A on transitioning from how we do our elections for school board and select board currently. John can fill you in. We have that alternate nomination process. It doesn't really, all of it could be superseded if the board chose to move forward with this. There's those 90 days, the 90-day prior to town meeting, you all have to do this. The mechanics behind this are not overly complicated. It's more the desire for the board and any sort of public information campaign you want to do around whether the town would support this transition or not.
Does it require the use of voting machines or anything like that, or do we still do it on a ballot like we do at the town meeting?
It really depends. So like for our current size, we would likely still hand count them because the process of sending off to ES&S our ballots for calibration and loading the medium, it's pretty complicated. So the state does a lot of that and we're required to do it. For the municipality to do it specifically for our purposes, we can hand count those. It's not, it's 2 questions, pretty straightforward. So I wouldn't anticipate, just like we do, so we hand count all the school stuff, for example. We don't calibrate our election machines for the school budget referendum.
Yeah, I asked to be on the agenda, specifically the adoption of way, which would allow us to vote, selectmen, a select person and school board member, by secret ballot with the poll open theoretically from 10 to 8 or whatever it may be. By way of history, I actually proposed this several years ago, and actually Justin Penny on the board. And we ended up compromising with this alternative nomination procedure. That's sort of the history of how we got there. And the reason we did that is because one year we had about 6 people run for school board because there was some hot issue about the net tech getting fired or something with the Butler. And a month later, the person that got elected quit. I mean, she hadn't thought it out at all, blah, blah, blah. So we thought maybe the nomination process would, encourage people to think it through a little, when I really want to make this commitment, rather than just standing up at town meeting and saying I want to be on the school board. But I think given our elderly population and the fact that we're talking potentially about moving fiscal year change, which would allow us to piggyback a secret ballot referendum on the June state elections, which tend to get a good turnout. But the time has come to consider this. I think we have a lot of elderly folks that don't tend to get out town meeting in the evening. I also think there's a lot of people that in March, and assuming we're back in March, aren't here. We'll be here in June, and moving into June would be good. But I just think that, and I also think, I hate to say it, but I'm not sure we're done with this COVID thing yet. And I hate to see us in the same mess we were in next year that we were in this year. And if we proactive and have a special town meeting in November or sometime along that time frame, we can get this adopted. And we can always go back. There's nothing saying that we have to stick with it if it doesn't work out for us. So I would encourage us to put it in front of the town at a special town meeting and see what they think.
I agree. I also intrigued, well, this process does have a formal nominating papers process associated with it, but it still allows for writing.
Yes.
Which, how do we get back to the wonderful days when we had a couple, 3 candidates, candidate night, all that kind of stuff? Because the last time that happened was when I was elected.
And that was on Tuesday.
Yeah.
I don't know, but I'm hopeful that this might generate a little more interest. I don't know, but I don't know the answer. But I will say that I would only endorse this if we also move. And I don't want to be on ahead of the agenda, but we also move the fiscal year to June. I don't think it makes a lot of sense to hold a special election in March and bear the cost.
So this falls into the timeline issue.
Yeah, I kind of weave all 3 issues into that timeline.
So I'll just summary from my own education. I mean, I'm on board with changing the fiscal year. You think this is important because you think you'll get a bigger turnout?
Oh, I'm positive. I mean, I
That
can't guarantee it, but if people can come and vote from 10 in the morning, the privacy of the voting booth.
Okay, so we would have it like a normal election.
Well, you're gonna have the June primary or June referendum. There's usually a state election, second Tuesday, almost all. I can't remember when it was.
Well, you have to prove the school budget.
Right, got a school budget in a minute, right? But usually there's other things, so it would just piggyback on that same time. And you're right, if there's no nomination, you have rights.
How would this, I was gonna say, how would a write-in candidate, like at the town meeting, you stand up and say, I'm Dan Gaudio. Somebody has stood up and said, I'm gonna vote for Dan Gaudio. You introduce yourself.
Send emails.
How would you do that?
Send emails, smoke signals, talk to people. I mean, yeah.
You can't stand out in front of the building. You can't write.
just think that,
Do we know any counties that do this?
Motown.
Oh, yeah. We're the exception to the rule.
Yeah.
Doing the county.
There are very few towns, there's only 2 towns that I know of that have the alternative nomination procedure, that's us and New Sharon. And then there are several towns, they can be very, very small.
Well, it's an
towns.
alternative nomination.
That's what we do.
Where the voting's done at town meeting.
But you gotta take out nomination.
Yeah, but I thought that wasn't considered nomination.
So in my hometown of Washington, go to town meeting and someone says, I nominate Dan Gaudio to be on the select board.
We don't.
Because we have adopted an alternate nomination
Nomination
process.
We
That's what
used
makes
to.
us even more sub from those remnant, everything's done at town meeting. We're an even subgroup from that. One of 2 towns that do it this way in the state.
And a lot of towns tend to be very, very small in the hinterland, so to speak, that still do the old fashioned way where they can't have a town meeting and don't say, I nominate you. Right there on the floor. And then so-and-so Jeff nominates Penny and then there's a vote, but nobody knows who's running ahead.
But most of our town meetings, we don't know who's running ahead of time.
Well, it wasn't always that. So that's, you know, and we obviously don't need to decide this tonight. But I just felt that we were gonna take a look at the other 2 items, that perhaps we should take a look at this.
But nowhere in here are we creating the Waldeboro Road build-up. Because we're not doing the budget.
No,
Secret ballot.
but this would allow you, although I personally.
Ooh, you don't wanna go there, do you?
I know, I don't wanna go there, but it would allow the select, it would allow you to put a referendum question out, for example, on Gilbert Butler. If you really wanted to get a good cross-section of opinion, for example, or something of that nature. Although personally, I think we can already do it on everything except for election officials, but then some of the more learned people than I disagree with that, so. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So. Item C.
So not a huge amount as far as updates, just with the new board and just ensuring that we all, again, very much support this and you all giving me marching orders on pulling resources together. Really, the only update that I have is, so many months ago when we had first started talking about this, I feel like the board kind of got their arms around it. Walter, I think you indicated that it wouldn't seem like a horrible idea to see if there were some consultants or knowledgeable folks that for a reasonable amount might be able to assist lightly in making sure this goes smoothly, and we've checked all the boxes and dotted I's and crossed T's. Having John on board helps us, you know, he's knowledgeable about the process. However, I did reach out to a auditor who runs a very large firm and had a discussion with him about what that might look like. And he was very enthusiastic on reduced rates or possibly some pro bono assistance. And then just kind of on that, it wouldn't seem like a horrible idea to go back out to RFP for auditing stuff, as if we're going to transition to a fiscal year, having an RFP process and potentially some fresh eyes on our finances, on our budget process. Just doesn't seem like, if we're going to be doing a lot of these mechanical moves and motions, doing a good thorough evaluation of everything seems to kind of dovetail nicely into that.
The thorough evaluation of what? What's that mean?
So when you have the same audit firm for
Another financial audit that will be proposed.
not necessarily another financial audit. So one of the few requirements for transitioning from calendar to fiscal or fiscal to calendar is whether you do the 6-month or the 18-month, you have to do an audit of that year. And we've just had the same auditor for a long time. I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with our auditor, but
I'm not opposed to that, I'm just trying to understand what
Yeah.
you're saying.
it's, sometimes you fall into that, I know what I know, and so things, I'm not
So you
saying.
look at it another set of eyes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so if we were to go back out to RFP at some point and have some folks bid in, we might find that there's good options out there and that we potentially save a little bit of money and then get fresh eyes on this new budget or.
Let me put it into perspective, my earlier discussions in Martin Mills around this. What I wanted to avoid is having the inexperienced and the unknown walk into this and try to do it. So my first thought was, let's go find somebody who's done this before and learn from that person what all the pitfalls and traps were and steps to success. I think, John, you might have a comment on that.
Yeah.
I do. Actually, let me tell you, I had a long discussion with John Fowler, who's the former long-time town manager of St. George. He was down there 25 years or something like that. And he and I talked probably about 50 minutes on the phone. He was there when they made the change to a fiscal year. His advice was really two things he really keyed on. One is it's critical between the annual town meeting and when where you adopt this. Well, two things. You know, we could actually change it, but he recommended strongly, and I agree with him, that we should. You know, we don't have to. We should get the town. And I support that because I think we're going to have buy-in from folks. And so if the town approves it, say in November, he felt that it's really critical to do a lot of public education over the next couple months after that. And I'll put that in my timeline. The other thing that he and I talked about is the idea of doing a 6-month budget. He thought was great because you're going to have, 2 tax bills, 2 audits, you're going to have liens, 3 liens in play on different tax years. It's just going to get so confusing. So they went with an 18-month, and I think most people do that, an 18-month budget, the initial time to make the change. I don't want to get ahead and talk about tax bills, we're kind of close to that, but when we get to that, I can get the comments on that. The impact on this fiscal year change. But he was very, very helpful, and he also said he'd be willing to zoom in if you were so inclined at some meeting or workshop or something, and share with you personally, 3 of us, his experiences. And ironically, he was opposed to it, and he's come to realize that it was the right thing to do. But one downside is if you get a big jump in the school budget, you got to absorb it. This is once you get through the 18-month budget. You got to absorb it all in that year. You don't get to split it over 2 years.
Yeah, it's sort of a good thing and a bad thing.
Yeah. It makes calculating mill rates and everything a lot easier, but if it's a big hit, you're absorbing it all out that first year. All right. Yeah. So, something to think about.
Yeah.
You've heard me talk
Soliciting
on-
your opinion.
Yeah, you've heard me talk on this before. I think it's absolutely the right thing to do. We should have done it years ago. I kind of wish we had, even with the gotcha on the school budget. It makes everything else so much easier, so much simpler. And I agree with the 18 months. The reason is because I think what you're going to have to do is do a dual mailing of the taxes, so that will soften the impact of having 18-month tax year instead of a 12-month. But I think it's time, and I do think you want to go to the town and say, do you want us to do this? I think you probably have it in your bag of tricks to be able to do it on your own, but in this town, I don't recommend that. And then it's got to be public input, public follow-up. You've got to explain to them what it is you're doing. And if you're going to get your tax bill and it's going to be for 18 months, but here's all the benefits. So I absolutely strongly support it. I was one of those a few years ago that was against us going normal town voting on the way we did the nominations at the town meeting. But I have significantly changed my opinion of that. I think now is the time to start doing it. You call it secret ballot, we do secret ballot already.
Right.
But it's a vote at the town office as opposed to the town meeting. And the good thing about that is it now concentrates the town meeting on things other than who's going to run the position. Then people can, anybody in the town who's going to vote in anything can vote on that. So I think now is the time to do it, especially as you transition. I thought it was a bad idea to do it, have our own voting booths in March while we were having a town meeting, and also have a write-in or come in and vote, because it would have cost us money to gin that up and have the voting monitors and do all that kind of stuff. And I thought that was kind of silly. But if we're going to do it in June, right around the state referendum or anything that they got, it's a no-brainer.
I like the idea of sitting in, that I've done this before. Conceptually, I totally agree with fiscal year changeover. I hope we get a preponderance of citizens that agree with us. Because I also agree that we shouldn't exercise our authority to do this on our own. Jan?
Yeah, we've talked about this several times in the past, and I'm all on board. I think, you've educated me now on the secret ballot piece. That was a little confusing for me because, like Jeff just said, I always thought we did secret ballots, but I can see the value of it. And I think if people are coming here already in June, as you say, for a state, it's the right time to piggyback on that. Again, I'm all on board with changing the fiscal year, and quite honestly, I'm in favor of the dual tax twice a year. Dual payments. I did that already for St. George.
I have a question. Does voting for the officers by at the referendum, does that mean that would have to be determined early enough to be an absentee ballot?
Yeah, you can vote absentee. That's another positive thing about it. I don't know how many times I've heard over the years. What do you mean I can't vote for Swift? I'm not going to be here. I say, well, no, you're going to be at the dance if you want.
You still have to be a registered voter.
Oh, yeah.
But, so is that, when does Chelsea, how long do you have to provide the absentee ballots before?
Oh, it's all laid out. It's all spelled out, laid out.
Because
When nomination papers are available, when they need to be turned back in.
Like 30 days?
Maybe more.
Yeah.
Actually, what the statute does is it references state election statute for timeline stuff. If I recall correctly. But yeah.
Well, I do know that we have talked about it as soon as the county goes, well, county's never gonna go. So it's fine.
And the only reason it's an advantage to do it when the county does it is because if the county does it at the same time as the town, then you don't have to do 6 months or 18 months. You have now 4 or 5 years, so you can do a 13 month. That's the only real thing.
Sure. So,
yes.
What I would like to know is what you all want to see in front of you at your next meeting to make sure that we are tracking with this timeline and keeping momentum. Would you like to see basically the beginning portions of a special town meeting warrant that we can start poking holes in. I mean, for example, I have some questions about, one of those warrant articles should also be additional authorization for expenditure of funds, because we're possibly gonna have an even longer interim time period between, because what we asked for in previous town meetings was 1/4 of last year's budget we can spend until we get it approved. So there's a handful of items that we're gonna have to like hit at the same time. I'm positive that my first draft of the special town meeting warrant won't catch all of it, but do you want to see in front of you as good of a push as we can, try to push it out for your all's review as early as I can, so by your September meeting, we have a much better understanding on the timelines, the mechanics, the moving pieces, and the specific language, so that once we get to October, it's more cleanup, and we might even be able to start some of the public information for the special town meeting in either November or December.
I think we also should have that section.
Yeah, I would recommend we do that first. I think why create something from nothing? I'm sure St. George again has one that they use. A warrant that we could probably piggyback on, just learn from.
Yeah, but this was my work product, I sent it to them, so this is talk all the basis.
And it doesn't, you should, when that timeline really gets filled out, it should have mean dates and all kinds of stuff, but I just try to provide it. But before we move to the next one, I see this as a three-legged stool, we haven't talked about the third leg yet.
So that is a discussion of collecting taxes.
And if I could, I talked to Clint about John about that, and I thought of, I've been not necessarily committed to that, for a number of reasons, but I think it's fine that I won't do it again. But after talking to John, I've softened my position on that. For one thing, he pointed out that a lot of people, especially in the early years, just paid the bill, their whole bill, and took up. They were used to doing that, that's when they had money, so they did it. And certainly people have that option. If they want to do it.
That's still an option, right?
And so that sort of weakened my argument that I have with myself, that, people don't have money in the spring. Well, if you've got money in the fall, then pay your taxes in the fall. But the other thing is he explained that although interest started to accrue only on the portion due in, I'm going to say October 1st, only on the portion due October 1st, obviously it didn't accrue on the portion that wasn't due until April 1st. Is that right? Anyways, and he also pointed out that the liens actually don't go on until after the April date passes, whatever period after they're delinquent. So there's no additional cost or anything associated with people that don't pay in September. So I think I've kind of changed my mind after talking to John, that it does make sense to do all three legs of the stool. I'm sort of abbreviating our conversation. But I would point out though that the collection due date for taxes is something that's on the extent. And my understanding is they got to do it every year. So they could do it 1 year and not the next year. Now, we've never had an issue with that. That I recall. And usually it's one of those articles.
You haven't set the date down?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. The date?
October
Yeah, they
1st,
do.
and the delinquent date of October 2nd with accruing daily interest is all part
Yeah,
of one.
right. And it's one of those things like, see,
Yeah.
just everybody votes for it.
Yeah.
Article 27, 28, or whatever, that everybody's tired.
So I'm not 100% convinced that I feel that way. I'd like to research it a little more and think about it a little more. But again, that's a decision that has to be made every year. I'm beginning to think I am too.
Yeah, I have to.
Now, the other thing though, you gotta remember is that first year, the 18-month budget, it's gonna be half of 18 months, so it's gonna be, if everything else is equal, it's gonna be 3/4 of what you're, and then 6 months later, you got another 3/4. So that's why that public education is critical. Because people are gonna say, what? Not realizing that it's for 18 months.
This is tangentially related. Subject of town meeting came up. I think it's germane for me to ask this question. And it's in I didn't appreciate the smoke and mirrors comment that we got from a fellow citizen about how we conducted the town meeting. But I withheld from responding. But let me ask a question. If I were to respond, it would have been to say that the purpose of town meeting is not to do a show and tell on the budget. There is ample opportunity for people to evaluate the budget. And as a matter of fact, on February 6th, I produced a budget memo that detailed a 15.3% year-over-year increase, and that would likely lead to a new mill rate of 15.74. We actually underachieved that, et cetera, et cetera. And that the town meeting is an appropriations meeting, not a budget meeting. Do you veterans agree with that assessment? Which is not to say that people can't question the appropriation on a budget line, but I don't feel an obligation to go into the town meeting with that detailed spreadsheet and as is being requested in some circles.
I guess I kind of feel that way, but I'm kind of a traditionalist about town meetings. I feel there should be very narrow discussion on the warrant articles. I don't really like it when people do presentation. Because I've always felt that there's a fine line between information and propaganda. So I like, people want to ask questions, they can ask me, this year was a little different. I think people were itching to get out of it. Some people just leave it. But I totally agree with you. I don't think it's a show and tell. That's just my personal looking for opinion.
No, I certainly feel that way. It's interesting to me. We have all these budget committee, select board meetings, weeks of them, and rarely are they attended by anybody from the community. And then we get to the final thing at the town meeting, and people who easily could have come and drilled into a specific portion of the budget that was on the agenda for a specific night are asking questions. And again, I think there's a whole lot of people in the room that didn't want to go there anyway. You feel obligated to do that for that one person. So I don't know how we get away from that, because if you say we can't say you can't ask questions, but at the same time, it frustrates me as a guy who spends hours and hours here, as this Jeff and the other selectmen. I wish people would, if you really care, come and ask your questions at the right time. And you'll drill into it as much as you want.
I will say one thing I was disappointed in is we didn't have the detailed budget in the town report.
So that was
We only had 3 pages of the summary.
Yeah.
That was a major swap for me. I personally always grab that to refer to it every time I open it. I've done that about 10 times.
Did it used to be?
Yeah, that was a kill fewer trees. But
yeah, I know.
It was also, I will say that I was pushing hard while we were putting together the town report and talking with the chair, reviewing how other towns do it, that we provide a significant amount of information in our town report. It's not required. I'm not saying it's not useful. And if I recall correctly, where we kind of settled was, okay, let's put it in here in an abridged form. We'll always make available to anyone requesting as much detailed information as they want. And we'll look after this year and see what feedback we get from the citizenry, whether that was a good decision or a poor decision, because there's always next year and we can always try to correct. But you don't know what the citizenry is gonna do and react if you don't actually try.
I've heard more it was a bad decision than a good decision. So, this citizen thinks it was a bad idea. You're not, you know. Okay.
It might be beneficial to do beyond, not at a regular meeting. But like obvious logistics, I mean, obviously we can open. I just think it would be easier to communicate. Obviously, we're not here tonight.
Yeah.
But that's your call.
No, I agree.
You know, and maybe we can pull someone else into the same discussion.
Only what, September we met?
Oh, geez, I can't remember.
Well, we could make it just a workshop.
Yeah, that's what I'm, yeah.
We're good for the second, there's no elections or no other conflict, so we're good for the second Tuesday in September.
Correct. So, I would suggest we try to do this section beforehand, rather than after, or that night.
And what I'll do is I'll work with John to see if it's appropriate to get in touch with John. I'll try to pick his brain lightly so that I at least have some South Thompson specific document for you all to look over while you have that conversation with John. I do think it's important that I get something in front of you all, as poor as it may be, for us to start fiddling, because what I don't want is to get to October or November, and then I'm crafting a document at that point, catching errors and mistakes, and then we're pressed for time, and we're trying to hit this end fall special town meeting date, we're amending again and amending, with very little time to communicate to the public what's actually going to be on it. So I'll try to use my time wisely now in your next meeting to get you as good of a document to have as part of that conversation.
First thing I would do is call it St. George and go get the warrant article that they put in place to do it.
Probably in their town floor, well, or be in minutes or something.
So you're looking at September 8th. That's the first day of September.
We'll know that that's the day after Labor Day, since Labor Day is the 7th.
And
So you're coming up a long weekend.
And that's an oddity because Tuesday is the first day of that month. So it's almost like it's not the second Tuesday.
No, I hear you. I'm just saying, coming up a long weekend. When will be that holiday?
Yeah, and I agree with Walter, you know, this is, I think we can pretty blow with this stuff. The article.
I know enough about myself, John. I don't want to mess this up for the town, and I really appreciated when I pushed documents out to you all. The feedback that I've gotten is why I enjoyed the budget process, because I give it as good of a stab as I can, and then I have really smart people look it over and tell me where I got it wrong. So it's more for me and my mental
All I'm
health.
saying is you don't need to reinvent the wheel on this.
Yeah. Nor do we want you to focus too much attention on it to the detriment of other things that are already in play.
Right.
Okay. Streetlights.
Okay.
Requires a vote. What are we voting?
Well, okay, so I guess requires signatures and requires votes are interchangeable. So there would be two groupings of documents if you wanted to sign tonight that we would need to move forward. One grouping of documents is from CMP and the other is from our financial institution. I have been tempted to go and check my email to see if Machias got me a 6-year amortization schedule, because I've been kind of reviewing what our expenses for streetlights have been this year, what our historical ones have been, what the 5-year amortization schedule would be from Machias, and what the expenses would be. And I am kind of coming to the back of the napkin on clarification that I think we're going to need a 6-year loan and not a 5-year. Well, and we had talked about this before.
Yeah. Some background. The only reason in my mind we are doing this borrowing was I got infatuated with the fact that we have incredible leverage that we weren't using. And so why put this in the budget at a year, where I thought exactly what. So with every passing day, I regret that decision. Anyhow, what do we, go ahead, John.
No, I don't have much to add at this point. I think I'm not sure what we're voting on. I assume we have to, if you're gonna authorize loan documents, you have to have a vote to authorize someone to sign those documents. I think the bank would want that. But I think I'm gonna vote against this because I'm not convinced that ownership, I'm not opposed to LED, but I'm not convinced that ownership is the way to go. I think it's gonna be hidden. Suspicion is it's gonna be hidden maintenance costs. I made some phone calls. I talked to, you suggested Jay Filer, and I talked to Jay. I asked Jay how he felt about it and what led him to this decision. And do you think that maintenance, maintenance issues are gonna raise their head, maintenance costs? And his answer, I'll tell you, 5 years. That didn't make me feel real comfortable. On the other hand, he told me that Pharma did this, they budgeted the amount of money for maintenance and they didn't spend it all, they reduced it, but he didn't say how much. I just, and I just feel like I've come into the middle of this and I don't want to derail it by any means, but I'm not convinced that ownership.
I think Camden, I don't know whether they finally settled on this, but I read that as they were moving towards the final, they were thinking about a $9,000 maintenance bill. I don't know whether that was annual, and I don't think it was upfront, but here's here's my opinion. JD Power did a nationwide study last year of every electric utility in the country, and they did a customer satisfaction survey on a 1,000-point scale. CMP finished dead last, and not only were they dead last, they were on the 1,000-point scale 100 and some points lower than PG&E in the year that PG&E declared bankruptcy and also caused all those deadly fires in California. I mean, I don't think CMP is going to be here 5 years from now. So that's.
But there'll be some success.
Yeah, but so 8 towns in southern Maine are real-term customers. Everybody around us is, and all that's going to. Right, St. George is not. But all that's going to do is erode CMP's critical mass. And the same thing is going to happen to them, in my opinion, will happen to Fairfield. So, yeah, that's, yeah, no, I appreciate that. We don't want to be in the maintenance business.
I'm not going to try to convince you to vote otherwise. I simply said I don't think I'm going to vote for it.
Yeah, that's fine.
I have no intention to, Winston Churchill you or something.
Further questions? Came back on this, it's still 5.2 years.
Actually, slightly less than that, CMP.
Why do we need a 6-year?
Because 5.2 is greater than 5.
Like you said, it's less than 5.
Well, just slightly.
We're talking about an extra month.
And the payback, so the whole concept was basically 80% of our streetlight bill goes to the lighting equipment, right? And so we don't have to pay that once we purchase the equipment from CMP.
And it's kind of ironic that we're going to buy the equipment to throw it away. That's what it is, I understand.
Well, we're going to recycle it. That's neither here nor there.
There's no value to it, what we're going to pay for it.
And so we were going to take the cost savings of not leasing the equipment, plus the cost savings.
I've been on this since the beginning, I understand.
Yeah, and so because the payback is 5.2 years, but the payback isn't the entire story having a 6-year loan allows us to pay that back using just the cost savings and not additional appropriations over time. So we can do it under this 5-year agreement, but what we might need to do is raise the streetlight budget slightly in those 5 years to cover that gap. Under 6 years, we basically keep the streetlight budget flat, and we take all the cost savings and pay it back. That's why we put the 6-year projection in town meeting report, and why I thought what I was going to get from Caius was a 6-year loan. As soon as I found out that it was a 5-year loan, I communicated with them. The only snag seemed to be when they reached out to me today, they indicated an interest rate was different than what I had agreed to. So they said 6 years at 2.95%. We had been told 6 years at 2.85%. So I just don't have that 6-year promissory note and amortization unless it's in my email right now.
So we're not ready to sign anything for Chubbs. The promissory note here is a 6-year, 5-year loan at 2.75.
And what they had said was 5 at 2.75 and 6 at 2.85. The loan officer that I've done the bulk of the work with seemed to be getting derailed in other places, so they've shifted me to his assistant. She's been good and responsive, but she's apparently not understanding fully what I have worked out with the previous loan officer. So over the weekend, it was Sunday is when I emailed her and said, this is a 5-year loan, I need a 6-year loan.
I guess the bottom line is I'm comfortable with a 5-year loan.
So am I.
I think the difference is in the theory. The interest is on the whole 5 years is only $4,700. So
We'll make it make sense. It'll be a slight tighter, less breathing room than a 6-year loan, but more interest to pay over time. And then all the documentation for CMP is to purchase that equipment. And I'm not going to bore you to death on how it goes with CMP, but the punchline is they took $236 off of that purchase.
drop the acquisition cost. And the 6206.
Yes. And then on that one pager that I have, I indicated that, but I didn't cascade that reduction all the way to the bottom.
So the bottom line tonight is someone would need to sign the loan, promissory note, give it back for happy with a 5-year note.
Yes.
And then the customer owns street lighting agreement and bill of sale for 2.
Yeah, the customer.
Does this have a legal review?
No. The CMP one is.
Do we think that's necessary?
That's a company that was penalized $10 million by TSDUD. I think this should have that.
Yeah, I think so.
And as far as
they gave us a 9-page, 9-page document.
They sell us junk.
I've looked that document over. I got cross-eyed pretty quickly.
Yeah, I have too.
So did I.
But some of the things just, insurance requirements, and there's just things in here that, maybe it's all boilerplate.
I've already.
But I feel better, I think, if our legal looked at it and said, yeah, this is what.
Only because you brought up insurance, I've already gotten MMA. They provided that portion. Everything that CMP needs, I've acquired other than this. And
we have to pay for that.
What's that?
The cost associated with that.
Insurance? Eventually, yes. It's not part of our policy right now, and it wasn't even eligible until recently. MMA has only added streetlight insurance within the last.
What does that insurance cover?
So if someone basically acts of God, so like if a vehicle strikes the pole and the pole comes over, we would reach out to the driver of that vehicle's insurance. If a branch in a storm comes down and strikes that. But a branch comes down and hits it, we would reach out to the insurance company to say there was a winter storm, it ruined our equipment. Buy us new equipment, we pay a deductible.
I guess that's, to me, that's another expense of this process. I guess we need to look at that insurance closely and determine whether we self-insure or whether we pay for insurance. I hear you. Yeah, so I guess my point is I'd like a legal review on the agreement. I'm okay with the Chives note.
I have one comment tonight on that. You typically, there's a, with a municipal loan, there's a line in there that says if you prepay, there's no penalty, and I didn't see that. But I may have missed it.
I'll take a look at that.
Prepayment minimum interest rate in the event upon prepayment of this note, borrower understands that the lender is entitled to a minimum interest rate of $25.
But I didn't spend a lot of time.
Would you feel,
You knew how you were gonna
would you all feel comfortable with a vote empowering one of the members to sign for all of these documents after legal review? And then that has you all support it if you want to, or oppose it, and then gives me some additional flexibility to work with one individual and not have to wait for the next meeting.
I'm sorry, are you comfortable with that? Because I would propose the chair. Sorry, on behalf of the school board. So, okay. I move that we,
Probably gonna.
I move that you approve the promissory note as drafted by the promissory note. The Chives Savings Bank. And after legal review, the customer-owned street lighting agreement with CNP. And further that the chair sign on behalf of the select board.
No. I'll let you second it.
I'll second it. It's been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? All in favor? All opposed? Any opposed?
I'm opposed, no. But I think it's, I don't know if he's sorry. I think he knew.
Too much unanimity is not necessarily good. Okay.
Item F. Sorry if
Can we make this?
yes, but I apologize for providing too much information. I suppose potentially thought that it wouldn't be a horrible thing to include what you all did last time, and then some of our working documents that Chelsea had marked up. All you're really needing to consider is the first four documents where the last three actually need to be signed. So the certificate, assessor certificate of assessment, municipal tax warrant, the certificate of commitment, and then the certificate of assessment to be returned to the municipal treasurer.
Okay.
So that's the same one. There's no change to that one.
No, this is
Exactly the standard form. Right. This is exactly the agreement you sent it.
yes, and this was the one that we were able to suppress certain things. These ones, because they're generated by Trio, and there was that software issue.
Yep.
That's why these need to be redesigned. We can't suppress what Trio software tells us to do.
So, I did spend quite a bit of time on this. And after I got over my near heart attack, the red sheet. Showing that should have been $120,000 less. After he explained it to me, I checked over these sheets and everything looked good to me. I did notice that the school financing was $200 less. And that we signed on at the time of the commitment. But it appears as though you adjusted the anticipated revenue by $200, so the tax came on the same. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And then it was $1 one-off around the issue. But other than that, it looked good to me, so I would make a motion that we execute these three documents. And what I mean by that motion is I'd like to have all the named documents in the minutes.
there a second?
There is a second.
Is there any further discussion?
Under discussion, John, there was an email that you communicated with Owen. It had to do with municipal appropriations and so on. Differences you found.
Yeah, that was in 2019. 2018 checked out just fine.
Okay. Is this one, are you satisfied with this one? Is this one?
No, I still think there's a problem with that, but I mean, it is what it is. That year's over, and there's clearly a difference. I mean, you can see it right in the town report. You look at the assessors on the page I quoted.
Yeah.
He has the municipal appropriation $50,000 less than the budget and what the auditor had. Actually, not even quite that simple. The budget, the auditors are around 1,700.
Well, shouldn't we question that?
I reconciled that once upon a time.
You did?
I can't find my notes.
Oh.
The other thing that's in that memo is you calculated, the mill rate should have been $14.20. The way that came about was we told Rob, Cheryl and I, to away. Because the increase that year, before we applied unexpended cash, was from 1350 to 14. We didn't like that, so we have told Rob, go tell us how much surplus to allocate to make it 14. So it was a complete force thing.
Right, but that wouldn't change the municipal appropriation. That's the amount that was.
Oh, yeah, separate issue. And I reconciled that once upon a time, and I can't recreate it.
And the reason I was doing this is because I was doing that variance analysis, and it just wouldn't work because it didn't balance. And I discovered it. I didn't realize how much surplus was applied last year in the town meeting of the extra. That's the major thing.
$150,000 that we applied.
Well, no, there was a lot more applied.
And then there was at town meeting, we had over 100,000. We did like 30. So
that I am not satisfied with that. That does not affect me.
No, I understand.
And I'm still trying to work that out.
I'm really interested in this too.
I'm still trying to work that out. I haven't. My son's here. They're leaving for Portugal on Friday for 2 years. And so, yeah, I have family stuff.
But this also goes back to, I'm having less and less confidence in our auditor.
Oh, I think the audit is right on.
So you don't think it's the auditor?
Well,
The auditor shouldn't have caught something that they didn't get? The same discrepancies that you picked up?
no, the auditor's amount and the budget amount are almost exactly $1,700 different.
Almost.
Well, yeah, but that's a lot better than, that's a lot better than 50,000.
Yeah, no, I agree.
But
1,700 is still not a good number for me.
No, I know, but I think the auditor's probably right. And it even gets a little more complicated. But
Okay.
I'm gonna send,
For another time.
if I get that variance analysis done, I'll send it out. I think it's quite illuminating.
Okay. I know there's a motion on the table, but just to throw it out there, we deal with a lot in this office, and we very much appreciate the time that is put in by folks to scrutinize anything that we've done, and we stand ready to work with John and anyone else to reconcile any human errors that we might have done, so that we can learn from them and be better next year.
Where was some?
There's still a motion on the table.
Any further discussion?
We're
gonna sign it.
If you want, everyone has the same.
At long last.
Whichever one you want.
All in favor?
Okay, while you are signing those,
Like if it says 22 July, doesn't really matter.
no, because that's when you get it amended. And when we file them away, we're gonna file them with the documents you signed on July 22nd, and these all having the inclusion documents. Okay,
Is there anything to report on?
really the biggest thing, I mean, Darlene Dorsey is still moving on permitting and, refining plans. The biggest update, like I indicated in the report, was now feeling like we had the funding approved and we have a better understanding of the project scope and area, and me having a better understanding about the properties, I did finally reach out to the business manager for the owner of the property, the one property that do need permission to move forward on the project in the least headache route by this voluntary compliance. I've had some really good emails back and forth with that individual, trying to stretch. He's really easy to get along with.
Who is the, why is this a secret?
No, so his name is Wig Zaymore, Wig something.
Who does he represent?
It's an Italian last name. The people that own the mainly lobster, mainly seafood. Interesting, so they, yes, right next to the lobster town. Interestingly, so that family owned a very large restaurant in Boston.
They owned Anthony's, no, they were big vendors in Anthony's.
And so what that facility was used for historically was simply providing fresh lobsters exclusively to that restaurant.
Right.
There's some things going on with the restaurant.
Close.
Right. And so the owners are actually pretty difficult to get in touch with. And because they have multiple holdings and a lot of different things going on, their business manager is kind of the first stop off. So I've been working with him so that he better understands the project, understands what the impact would be, so that he can then try to explain to his clients, because the clients eventually take the sign. So anyway, the punchline is it's been a good interaction, and I've tried to indicate to him that everything that I've done, unbiased review, this road project will make your property more business friendly, it'll help with your operations, so I am cautiously optimistic that we won't get resistance from the property owner that we need permission from. And after they review, they should sign, and then we are really good to move forward on the project.
All right, MMA vote for vice president.
I think we should pin this down a little more formal before we get too deep into spending money.
We haven't expended any Northern
No,
Borders
but we've
money yet.
authorized Scott and Dorsey to move ahead.
You did.
Right?
You voted last time.
I know. And before we get too deep into it, all I'm saying is, I don't want to rescind that. I just think we need to get this a little more formalized, or at least heading in that path.
You're talking about this one potential objective.
But people that we need to make the,
Yeah. Oh, I agree.
I mean, I think just because you have good feelings about the businessman who has no right to sign anything, you know, I think we need to try to move that along.
Well, there should be some document, I'm assuming the Gartley endorsement you're gonna produce for them to sign off on.
I don't think, I mean, Gartley Dorsey will assist in it, but it'll be the town's document.
Right, we're gonna have to have deeds.
Yep.
And I think we need to, I think that needs to be sort of priority number one.
Well, so yes and no, this is a 2-site project. And so Gartley and Dorsey can move ahead on the south site. And we can be working, that's the site that needs a little more permitting because of disturbing of the wetlands there. So there is a lot of work that which the town is very eligible to move forward on without anyone's permission. They can keep Gartley and Dorsey moving forward as I try to cultivate a positive relationship with these folks.
Well, that's my point. I don't think we want to cultivate a positive relationship with them. I think we want to get moving on a formal sign.
Do you get people moving by kicking them in the ass, or do you get them moving by showing them a pot of money?
My feelings.
And I'm happy to try to see if I can make quicker contact with him. From talking with the operator down there at the Lobster Town, he advised that dealing with Wig was probably the best route. He's easier to get a hold with. He's a very reasonable person, and he communicates with these 3 brothers frequently, and they look to him for recommendations on how to manage their real estate and assets.
So what do we hope to get out of this? What's the end state? We hope to get
A voluntary signature allowing us
on what?
on
Signature
their,
on what?
to do work on their property outside of the public
Right,
rights.
signature of intent.
Like John was saying, there are documents that we're going to, I don't know the exact document title off the top of my head, but it's a permission that says you can now do work on my property with mine.
How do you know that? Endorsed, say that that was what they needed permission. So
Well, I thought, we've known,
that's the document I'm talking about. Charlie Endorsky should have prepared something for them to sign, which lays out the plat and the distance and all that stuff that the engineers would determine how much property we're gonna take here and how much we're gonna give back there.
well, I guess I took a little bit of discretion, and because we are still in the relative planning stages, if the owner of that property, which we need permission, says, no, I really like this project, is there any chance that you can shift this slightly? And it would make this portion of my property even better, and it gets our end goal, doesn't affect the project.
So that puts you in the engineering role. You become the liaison between that owner and the engineers. You go back to Charlie Endorsky and say, hey, can we do this? I would like to see that.
What I've also volunteered to, is to bring the engineer anytime, so he's now in the, I want to understand the general bones of this project.
I got it, but again, I see you doing the job that we're paying them to do. You're doing it as a volunteer. In my opinion, Charlie Endorsky should be talking to that property owner, explaining the project, explaining what we're taking, or what we want to take, or what we want to give, and asking for their approval. Say, I've got the town administrator doing that, and I just don't see that as part of your job. Now, I appreciate you trying to develop a relationship. That's okay.
Yep.
Call them, if you want to call them and say, Charlie Endorsky are our engineers, and they would like to talk to you about this project. And then let them do what we're paying them to do.
I don't disagree with you. We've had 3 mails back and forth, and the last 2 included the offer to, once you have an understanding, we'll bring our engineers to talk about this in greater detail. So, I mean, I'm right there with you. I just think I'm trying to tee it up a little bit better for Gartley Endorsky, so we almost had a yes, and then Gartley Endorsky is just the final details. And we haven't gotten any.
Are you comfortable enough with the engineering to have that discussion with them to get a yes? Can you tell them how many feet we're taking here and how many feet we're giving back there, and the impact on this property?
I can walk them through the designs, the draft designs that we have online, and talk them through what the site looks like. This is not my first time being involved in medium or larger scale engineering and road projects like this, so I feel comfortable having these type of conversations with landowners. Once we start getting into details about shifting from what the draft plans are, then no, I'm definitely outside of my scope. But I'm just trying to tee this up for Gartley Endorsky to have a willing partner to think.
Again, just to beat that down, I always worry about you overextending your time. You're sending me emails at 11 o'clock at night. And I'm asking myself whether this is where I want you spending your time. And I want to speak for me, not for the board. But that's one of my concerns that I have. So all I would ask is that when you don't have to do this, you can send this out to people who are professionals, even though you're comfortable doing it, who are also getting paid to do that. I would ask you to do that.
But we haven't paid them yet.
No,
And
this contract with them.
right, and this would potentially lessen some of that.
Boy, I want to see that line item. Okay,
So
yeah, we're taking $500 off because Owen did all the communication with the guy. Okay,
My point is, I just think we need to make that a priority.
I agree. I agree. And if you guys are comfortable with Owen making that his priority, I can live with it.
it's definitely not a priority. I've sent a couple of emails back and forth, and I had a conversation with the
But
operator.
we want to make it a priority, what we're just talking about.
Oh, getting Gartley Endorsky.
We want to make a priority, getting an agreement from the property.
Oh, yeah.
However, it's gonna go to deed or whatever it is.
Okay, I'm off my soapbox.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
If they don't sign, does this project stop?
No. It becomes more complicated and more expensive. We have to go legal takings and reimburse them at fair market value, and it's a pain. It's a massive pain. But we can move forward with the project. It might push it back. And then as it relates to the funding from Northern Borders, even if we push the project back to go legal routes and legal takings, they've already told us that because of COVID and those delays, they have zero problem giving us an extension to September of 21 is when the grant expires. But they said, just tell us that you need more time and we'll hold it open for you.
I can follow up on that. I don't think it's dealing with it, but I was also under the impression that if the engineering told us at the last meeting, I'm almost positive that if we had to keep in the current right of way, we could keep the project going. Okay. If we absolutely had to keep the project in the current right of way, we could do it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Which would not involve a
I
take.
mean, the real project is raising the highway. So if we had to follow the same footprint, we could do that, absolutely right. But I think it's the town's advantage and it's a safety factor. If we can straighten that
I
out.
agree.
Under
That's
the
why we pursue.
current design, we need their permission, or we can always alter that design.
I think, and I think what Owen's trying to do is, building a relationship. It's actually not a bad deal for them. In fact, we think it's a better deal for them because it gives them more property on the side of the road where the building is and the town is.
Well,
So, we'll see. We think of what they think.
Question is how long is in business?
They need more votes.
What? Still operating.
If we could somehow entice somewhere between 5 and 10 votes to call that facility their dock, then all of a sudden it becomes a much more viable commercial operation.
They're looking for more fisher.
The operator would like to see but the operator has a lot of hands in a lot of different things and is almost doing this simply because he was asked to. And so it's a little bit of a break even for him that allows him to move product in other aspects of what he's doing easier. And so talking it out with him, if he had somewhere between 5 and 10, maybe 12, then all of a sudden the dynamics of that port change significantly.
They just happen to every year owe us odd figures for months after the tax. They go right up to the weed project.
The only reason I ask questions is because I don't think this deal is gonna happen from you to him or by the owners. It's gonna be their lawyers. And you want your lawyers or your engineering firm communicating with them at the earliest possible moment to say, this is what we need. We think it's better for you. But oh, by the way, we are going to go ahead with the project. And the alternative is taking the project. Lawyers can say that to each other without pissing each other off. You can't say it to the property owner. You can't say it to their manager. But the lawyers can or the engineering firm. And the engineering firm usually has lawyers on the past that do that. So I am in complete agreement. You need to offload that to them as soon as possible.
Any other questions on the road project? Item H, pretty straightforward. Vice President and Executive Committee members, you have their resumes. You don't have to vote. You can vote, do whatever you want.
You know that, Doug? I know the road. I know what and I know James Beck. Very impressive set of academic credentials. Yeah. I think he'd be excellent. And I know nothing negative about the other two, so I'll move that we endorse the like the nomination. Any discussion? Moved and seconded, all in favor?
Do we need to sign one again?
Yeah.
Pick one every two.
No, they're all fine.
I propose that we pick this up in September. I propose it's a long list. And it's 9 o'clock. And I guarantee you, we're not gonna have another 126 page board meeting.
We take this up.
No, And just as you chew on that for next month, that list was generated somewhat quickly with the direction of we want everything from high priority to the wish list. And then what I can have by next month, even expanded, but then also prioritized as per department head. So you're not looking and you're making the decision on what they think is a priority. So we'll have some sort of ranking system that makes sense, and they'll say this is one priority, this is two, et cetera.
What's up with the flagpole?
I need to find a flagpole and get it up.
So it's not that we don't have the money.
We did not budget specifically for that. We have the money for it, but it's just been one of those.
I was told that there's no flagpole because there's no money. I just wanted to get clarification.
I mean, we're gonna have a budget line item for the flagpole, but we have money. Okay, actually, what did we?
Skate park, yeah.
Skate park for a new item under new business is review of the skate park draft statement. Do you want a quick recap of where we're at right now? Well, I can try to summarize it very quickly.
You have summarized it.
Okay.
I don't need to.
So then all I'll say is August 17th is the next Camden Select Board meeting where they'll discuss this. And so after the 17th, we'll know whether Camden wants to move forward or not.
So we don't publish this until after the 17th.
Absolutely. Yep. Nope, the Y and I have talked about that. I got the Y's. This third paragraph is from the Y. They looked over everything else. I've also sent this to John and Pam Paquette out of respect for their son. It's the skate park anyway. And so the Y and I are just gonna sit and wait and see what Camden does. And if they want it, so be it. And if they don't, then we'll go forward from there. Really what I wanted to know was if you all continue to support the acquisition of this medium term. We store it all in Guilford Butler, and I work to just try to help facilitate John and Pam and others doing fundraising, work with MCED to see if there's skate park specific grants out there, like I indicate.
Yeah, I am in favor of obtaining the material, storing it. I'm not in favor of going ahead and changing the skateboard until we understand the future of Guilford Butler property. So I don't think we want to start expanding it. We may ultimately move it, we may ultimately expand it, but I think it's premature to do that until we know what we're doing with Guilford Butler. So that's just my comment. But I like the idea of getting our hands on this stuff.
Absolutely agree, and we will be some healthy amount of time before we even get the funding to move forward on the project. And anyone that's communicated or asked me questions about it, I said this is short-term goals, medium-term goals, and long-term goals. The short-term is, do we want to collect as much of this up and store it as we can so that we can come up with a plan that makes sense. I just don't want to see it destroyed.
Sorry, in the interest of time, what do we defer here? This is
Well, I think-
fodder for the.
Annual policy is done. We just, John and I need to sign it.
Yep, that's it.
Something policy
Same
is
thing.
done. We need to sign it. So if you've got those originals, we can sign them.
I signed.
You
I
signed
had
them.
the originals on my desk. I don't think there's anything wrong with
There's not.
signing the copies.
We don't want to do that.
Okay.
We want different copies of the signature. Should all be original. Get the one Walter signed.
Okay.
I can grab it on the way out. Those I think we can get out of the way.
What's missing on appointments? What about personal property tax?
Actually,
I have a proposal. Sorry, I think I can agree. I would recommend that the select board send a letter to burning question, unfortunately, one of the members equals. I like what happened. That says something along the following line, your son so, as you are aware, you have outstanding personal property taxes that have been the town of South Thomas, and these overdue taxes continue to accurate interest, accrue interest. This year, the year of the tax, the original amount, and the interest accumulated to date from inception are listed below. The select board is in the process of re-notifying all people with overdue personal property taxes and to avoid additionally formal measures, including, but not necessarily limited to, referral to a collection agency or small claims court. If you have any questions, feel free to contact Officer Scott, our administrator. We look forward to your cooperation. Okay, it's very simple as that. From the board, send it out to everybody, and see who. Who sold those.
The only thing that I'll add on that is that John stopped into the office today. Chelsea and I had already talked, and from what Chelsea was thinking, it dovetailed almost perfectly with what John was thinking. So I support, and so did the tax collector, what John proposed.
And I don't guess when I point out that one of those. Yeah.
The other one, Spruce Pizza, also doesn't exist anymore. I'm not
No,
sure
but
if
you
you
live
know
on Clark Island.
Do you know where
Jerry
it is?
knows, Jerry knows.
I know.
The only one I don't know, Pond Patrol or whatever, but they're the smallest. Yeah, and Chelsea doesn't know me, you don't know either, right?
I'm sorry,
You
what?
don't know them either, Contigo or whatever.
No. When you brought that up, it wasn't even.
Harry Bell.
So was there any sort of motion or just, we're gonna circulate?
I'll move that we draft a letter, asking for their voluntary compliance and indicate that we are willing to move ahead with more formal collection procedures. For a second? Right. Any discussion? Okay.
Let us,
For appointments, I did not get to the appointments. The only thing is that, from memory, the only thing that needs to be reconciled is some of our shellfish, standing around shellfish committee, and appointing someone to the board versus the committee.
I thought we were gonna try to straighten up some of the years in terms of the budget committee and one other committee. But I don't remember. I'll move the table that. If I agree.
so, future meetings.
Do we vote on the table?
No.
Do we vote on the other one we take? Do you want to make a vote on the motion?
Yeah,
Maybe it's skate park.
Huh?
You can't do skate park too. You want to make the same motion or we want two motions?
No, you tabled the building maintenance priority.
Really fast.
Okay, I'll move the table.
Second.
All in favor? Anything in the reports that we need to discuss?
I've talked about a bunch of stuff that was in mine. Nope, I submitted the grants. Tax bills have gone out. Like I said, we have enough to pay the school bill. Any questions about going through with the loss control people at Guilford Butler? Great. I'll continue to work with.
Where were they from? Last week?
It's MMA's.
Okay, so it's our insurance.
Correct. Yeah.
All right, so we have a meeting on September 8th.
Oh,
John, you want to make a case for 2 meetings?
I do, and I think tonight's a perfect example of why.
Yeah, I didn't, the last time this came up, we couldn't make a case. But I think, I would support for sure September, October, November. That's 2 months, two meetings, and then see what happens.
Yeah, okay, that's fine with me. My original proposal was we do it every month except for Christmas, December and July, August. But I'm more than willing to do a trial basis. And I think that we can also we also don't need to do, obviously, reports, financials and stuff at the second meeting. And maybe we can focus more on policy discussion, right, a little more. And I also just think in terms of follow-up, it's just my memory just isn't good enough to go on. But I do think they should be try to set them as much as possible, I'd say the second and fourth or something, Tuesday, or it doesn't have to be Tuesday.
The other thing that I will start, and you guys can fill it in, is time limits. And just projected time for each of these items.
I think that's good. I mean, I personally think that works.
Yeah, that was,
I know.
that was the venting of the emotions.
I know.
You gotta let that happen.
I understand.
Any amendments to the meeting minutes?
I have
I can go ahead on July 7th. On item 10, paragraph B, down where you have the little dot that says Gaudio moves here section. See underneath that third line down, severability clause. Severability.
Oh, yes.
And over under the appointments, at the very bottom, you've got demo degree. Carol Gerson. Yep. You need to put demo degree manager. Yep. And solid waste board. Skip. Skip.
In your prior life as the select board member, Tom, have you ever sentenced to the transfer station board?
yes. Actually, that's probably the most board I enjoyed the most ever.
I'm gonna be released on parole with you.
We're always talking trash. Okay, item 2, where motion passed 2-1. You got abstained. You got abstained.
Abstain.
I think
And
that's probably, I did it on the other one too. Then, didn't
I don't know. I didn't catch that one.
Well, Walter abstained from the transfer station vote as well, so I probably. But I'm sorry, I jumped ahead. Did you have anything else on page 1?
No, that was good on page 1. On 10A dot. Again, I don't mean to be picky, but the board related to they. The wrong. It. And it should be a thing, so
The board related that.
board is singular.
No, it's also a collective noun.
Really?
It is
Okay, I
correct.
stand corrected. So you can leave it alone. That's, and, the motion, I don't want you to change it. The second dot under B, that was not a motion. I went back and looked at it. It kind of captures the gist of it, but it wasn't the motion. And I personally feel that the motion should be captured precisely. So, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, that's okay. But it wasn't, you compare what you wrote here to what was on the. And then I had another, the board also expressed their opinion, but since that's been corrected, that's not an issue. And then the fiscal year, wouldn't that be July 1st to 30th?
Where are we at?
The next, I'm sorry, C third dot.
Yep.
I didn't think we were ever talking about July 30th. Well, first of all, that's not a year.
Oh, no, I had June, July backwards.
Yep.
Yep. Yep.
And,
There's 31 days.
and also, at the time, I wasn't really supportive of the two tax bills. But and then I get
I want to check that other Walter extension.
He was okay. Absolutely.
Oh, yeah. I got that one right.
On the 26th, is that the correct date, spelling of Rob Lessman? Reflection? Yeah.
I think I looked it up on the website.
Okay. I had it in my head as something else.
Duplessis.
that's all I have.
So is there a motion?
Motion to approve as amended. All in favor? Is there a motion to adjourn?
Did we set meeting date?
September 8th.
Yeah.
And-
Are we gonna set?
It's gonna be second and fourth, or what's that?
I probably won't be available.
2 weeks later would be the 22nd. I'm available. 3 weeks would be 29th. That would be 13 and 27 for October.
So we're gonna do the second and fourth for September, October, November. And then we visit it. That's awesome. You want a motion to that effect, or can we just set?
So second and the fourth, that's gonna be 29th. The 22nd. Because that has 5.
Isn't September 27th?
So the
Yes.
22nd is the
22nd. I said.
fourth Tuesday in September. So the 2 weeks is like.
So second and fourth of these months.
And then the 13th and 27th of October.
I will be done.
I have one more moment for you. I forgot earlier to let you know that the Historical Society is going to have a community picnic on August 23rd at 2 p.m. in the field maintained by Neil Payson on the corner of Pleasant and Waterman's Beach. Keeps it like a golf course, so there's plenty of room for parking and distancing. And there will be a small exhibit concerning the Cyrus Rackwood family. And it's a bring your own everything. There will be a few tables around, but mostly it's pack your lunch and join us there instead of the regular band concert and exhibit in the meeting room. And I forgot to write it down, so therefore I couldn't remember that. Thank you.
Put it on the web.
Can you answer those details, please?
Yeah.
And also, all in favor of adjourning? Thank you, late hitters. We will,
I got a quick question. So
be
what is it
shorter
called?
from now on.
Collective now? The tables downstairs. With longer.
Committee,
Fire, reserve, just the fire.
Feels so awesome.
The board bag, the tables downstairs. They belong to the town, not to.
Oh, it does, the board bag. Oh, it's like raising you.
Brian called me. Just for him to see.
So are you
Thought he was gonna be
English?
here. Said they understand the language.
An English major.
Auxiliary state.
I was an English major.
They're opposed and dirty. What do you know?
Years. I'm a lawyer.
I'm confused. I haven't seen any vote or dirty.
I saw them.
We're only using a few of the two of them.
Yeah.
I could have sworn they were. I don't think it was.
You recognize me now,
I do.
Sonia?
I
It's the
keep
first
having
I've heard that
anything
they're
in
not
other parts of my life.
Well, like, for example, we